Chapter 890. Fortunately, with the passage of time, the manic feeling in Guhan's body gradually disappeared, and Guhan also returned to his original state, but all this made Guhan realize that he might have entered a worse state. Before the first sword of the Green Lotus Three Swords, Green Lotus White Root Body, had not been practiced, it gave Guhan endless erotic desire. But after the Green Lotus White Root Body was practiced, this desire not only did not disappear, but it was deeply entangled in Guhan's body. Under normal circumstances, after Guhan used the Green Lotus White Root Body once, it would take a period of chi cultivation to be able to use Green Lotus White Root Body again. If he wanted to speed up this accumulation process, he could do something to stimulate his desire. But the lust did not completely disappear, because once Guhan accumulated enough sword chi for Green Lotus White Root Body, but did not use it, then Guhan would be like a bottle overflowing with water, and only by pouring out some of the lust that was already full could he be used. This was also since the end of the Yuzhang city invasion. Guhan gradually let go of his suppression of lust. Not only did he have sex with Wen Maiyun and her daughter, but he also got a slave from Wang Zihao, and after arriving in Yangjing city, he also maintained a certain degree of physical relationship with Chijian. To put it bluntly, this was to alleviate the side effects of Green Lotus White Root Body. If it was just this, it would not be a big deal, but what made Guhan feel bad was that Green Lotus Three Swords not only had the first sword Green Lotus White Root Body, it also had the second sword, and even the third sword. The first sword had been practiced, so naturally the second sword followed. Just like the first sword, when Guhan practiced the first sword, the second sword also began to operate automatically, completely not under Guhan's control, and automatically operated, just like the first sword. If the side effect of the first sword was lust, then the side effect of the second sword was the desire to kill. It was the desire to kill everything, even his friends and family. This was a desire that was much worse than lust. If it was lust, it could be alleviated by a round of love. Moreover, Guhan did not lack love partners for the time being. If it really did not work out, those cute dolls could also be used as a substitute. However, killing desire was not an option. It would be fine if he stayed on the battlefield. He could just find his enemies and kill them all. But what if they were in a base city? Could it be that Guhan wanted to kill his own people? However, the current situation was not too bad, because it had not been long since he mastered the first sword. Normally, this killing intent would disappear after he used his rationality to suppress it. However, what happened today had alerted Guhan. Under the circumstances of using the Green Lotus White Root Body, this killing intent would be greatly enhanced, and Guhan would need to spend a lot of his rationality to suppress it. He believed that as time passed, and as he continued to use the Green Lotus White Root Body, this killing intent would become more and more difficult to control. Perhaps in the end, Guhan would even become a murderous demon king. This was also the thing that Guhan was most afraid of. Although he was extremely confident in his willpower, Guhan could not guarantee that he would be able to suppress this killing intent. If he could not suppress it, then what kind of monster would he become? As a result, the need to find the Green Lotus Sword Fairy and find a way to cure the side effect of the 3 Green Lotus Swords became more and more intense. Only by finding the Green Lotus Sword Fairy could he get rid of this hidden danger. Otherwise, Guhan did not know what he would become in the end. After a few screams, a dozen or so Wu people fell to the ground, turning into soulless corpses. This was the terrifying damage that Qing Pin's sword could do to the Wu people. If it was not for the fact that he was deeply afraid of the young girl Qing Pin, Guhan would not hesitate to use the Qing Pin sword to kill all the Wu people. This way, humans could be freed from the endless cycle of reincarnation in Shanhai Pass, and Guhan could use this merit to become one of the most respected figures in the human world. There was no doubt about this. However, looking at the corpses of the Wu people all over the ground, Guhan could not feel happy at all. At the same time, a very ominous guess gradually formed in his heart. Guhan was a person who was good at thinking since he was young. At the same time, he had read many novels and information about Yuan Ku from ancient times to modern times. Therefore, Guhan was at least 50% sure that the cute Qing Pin might just be a simple body that the young girl Qing Pin used to walk in the human world when her body was sealed. This was like a person who needed a hearing aid to restore his hearing after he became deaf. However, when the young girl Qing Pin absorbed enough essence and blood of the Wu people to be liberated, which meant that when she regained her hearing, this hearing aid would no longer be an important companion that helped her listen to the whole world, but a symbol that had witnessed her tragic past. Many people would immediately lock this hearing aid in a drawer forever, or simply trample on it, making it disappear from their world forever. If this was the case, when the young girl Qing Pin was reborn, would the cute Qing Pin be locked up by the young girl Qing Pin forever like that hearing aid? Or would it be directly withdrawn into her consciousness, and from then on, the cute Qing Pin would never exist? No matter what the outcome was, it was an outcome that Guhan could never accept. Guhan could never obediently follow the young girl Qing Pin's words and use the Qing Pin sword to kill all the Wu people. At most, he would occasionally use the blood of the Wu people to appease the young girl Qing Pin. After understanding this, Guhan immediately sheathed the Qing Pin sword that had drunk the blood of the Wu people into its scabbard without hesitation. Instead, he held the Juzi sword in his hand. In the following time, Guhan did not plan to use the Qing Pin sword anymore. The waves of Wu people who chased after him died in the hands of the Juzi sword turned into a pool of thick blood and returned to the Zhu Wu's essence and blood. This was indeed a very ridiculous thing. Guhan, who had once decided to kill all the Wu people in the world, deliberately wanted to keep the lives of the Wu people for some reason. Everything in the world was really full of uncertainty. After killing more than 10 waves of Wu people, the Wu people seemed to have lost interest in looking for Guhan. Guhan could finally search for clues of Ashima and the others in Changbai Mountain in peace. Soon, Guhan came to the place where the photo was taken and found the white robe left behind by Ashima on the top of a pine tree. Guhan carefully observed the white robe and found a large burn mark at the tail of the robe, and there were some radial bloodstains where the heart was. From this, Guhan could tell that Ashima and the others should have crashed here like Liunian Ling. It was exactly the same as the analysis that Guhan had given to Yaoguang. Moreover, it seemed that Ashima's chest was injured, which was why there were radial bloodstains. Could this be the result of fighting with the Wu people of the Shi by Corpse tribe in the Star Shuttle? Next, Ji Yuhan used the white robe as the center and began to search the area one by one. According to Ji Yuhan's original guess, he should have been able to find the crashed Star Shuttle very easily. After all, it was a relatively large object, and its wreckage could be found from a long distance with the naked eye. However, to Ji Yuhan's surprise, even after searching for the next morning, he still couldn't find any traces of star shuttles. It was as if no star shuttles had crashed here at all. Did I miss some important clues? With this speculation, Guhan returned to the place where he found the white robe. He then jumped to the top of the tree and looked down at the whole land from the sky, trying to see if there were any clues that he had missed. Strange. The white snow there seems to be a little unnatural. Soon, Guhan, who was in the thoroughly meticulous state, found some incongruity in the snow not far away. The surrounding snow was very flat, and there were no other traces except for Guhan's footprints. However, the white snow there had sunk a lot, like a small bowl. When looking from the ground, it was not obvious that the snow had sunk. In addition, Guhan's main goal at that time was the wreckage of the Star Shuttle, so Guhan did not notice anything wrong with the snow at all. It was only when he stood on the top of the tree that he found this important clue. Needless to say, Guhan immediately came to the sunken snow with Jiyu Xuanwu. He inserted his hands slightly in the middle of the snow, and Guhan found that the sunken snow was indeed not formed normally. Jiyu Han could faintly feel that the snow in this area was different from the snow in other areas. The snow in other areas had a sharp feeling like sand when inserted into it. This meant that the snow had been accumulated for a long time. The temperature under the snow was extremely low, and there was no sign of melting. It was only after Guhan's palm had been inserted for a while that it gradually became moist because of Guhan's body temperature. However, the snow in this depression was different. He could feel that the inside of the snow was slightly wet when he inserted his palm. Obviously, the snow inside had not completely frozen. This snow should have covered this snow pit recently. In other words, this snow was deliberately filled by someone. Who would deliberately fill up a piece of snow? Of course, It was because they were afraid that the Wu people would find out about Ashima. Therefore, Guhan did not say anything and began to dig the entire snow. In the end, he dug out a large pit with a radius of about 20 meters, revealing the ground that was deeply buried by the snow. There were many metal fragments and various damaged parts on the ground. Looking at the color of the metal, it should be the unique paint on the Star Shuttle. Obviously, this was the first place where the Star Shuttle fell. However, the strange thing was that the main body of the Star Shuttle was missing. What was even more strange was that Guhan actually found a corpse of the Wu people here. This corpse had a long tongue and was obviously the corpse of the Wu people from the Shi-Bai corpse tribe. Combined with the place where it had fallen, this corpse was obviously the Wu people who had controlled the Star Shuttle of Ashima and the others. The fatal wound on this corpse was that it had been stabbed through the heart. Moreover, it looked like it had been stabbed over 100 times. Apart from a very few stabs, most of the sword wounds did not even pierce through the skin of the Wu people. Therefore, it would take over 100 stabs to stab this Wu people to death. The person who stabbed this Wu people to death did not look like a sword wielder at all, but more like a child holding a sword for the first time. However, this result was extremely normal. In a situation where there was no sword essence, most sword wielder was no different from a child. However, this was not the main point. The most important thing was this Wu people's corpse. This corpse actually still existed, and did not turn into a pool of blood and return to Zhu Wu's essence and blood. Could it be that among Ashima and the others, there was a sword maiden who had the same ability as Qing Pin's sword? Who was this sword maiden? Was she related to Qing Pin's sword? Chapter 891. Unfortunately, in order to prevent the Wu people from hunting them down, Ashima and the others had cleaned up their footprints very thoroughly. In addition, it was very difficult to preserve traces in the snow, which made it very difficult for Guhan to determine where Ashima and the others had gone after the Star Shuttle crashed here. Fortunately, Guhan still had his own brain to use. In a situation where all clues had failed, Guhan could only use his own intelligence to speculate the next path of Ashima and the others. From Ashima's point of view, when they fell on this snowy mountain, they naturally only had one request in mind, and that was to return to the human territory as soon as possible. Therefore, they would definitely choose the fastest and safest route to return to the human territory. Therefore, a map of the entire Shanhai Pass immediately appeared in Guhan's mind, and then he began to deduce the possible routes that Ashima and the others could take. First of all, the western route could be ruled out. Although the journey back to the human camp from the west was the shortest and the fastest, it had to pass through the actual territory controlled by the Wu people. For the sword-bearers who had lost their sword essence, this was undoubtedly a suicidal thing to do, so it was impossible to go south. Next, the eastern route was ruled out because Changbai Mountain was considered the border of the Ju-Tian Star Battle Formation. If they went east, it was impossible to return to the human territory, and they could only enter the sea. In this way, there were only two possibilities left. One was to go around the original Korean territory from the south, then cross the Yalu River and return to the human territory. The other was to go around the Yalu River from the east and return to the human territory. The other was to go north, go around the Mudanjiang, and return to the outermost area of the Taiyin garrison's territory, which was the ruins of Bing City. Then, Guhan needed to make a decision himself to determine whether Ashima and the others should go south or north. In theory, the southern route was the best because the weather there was better at this time, and there were fewer areas covered by snow and ice on the southern route, so it was easier to travel. However, there was a fatal threat on the southern route, and that was the core camp of the Qiangliang tribe was next to the Yalu River. If Ashima and the others took the southern route, they would have to pass by the Qiangliang tribe's camp, which was undoubtedly a very dangerous thing to do. They didn't have to worry about this if they took the north road. The north road was smooth all the way, and there was no obstruction from the Wu people's tribe. It could be considered the safest road. However, the north road had its own shortcomings. The snow was too heavy and too thick. The area north of Bing City had not been visited by humans for the past 1,000 years. There were no traces of humans in that area. It was frozen by ice and snow. The difficulty of going around it was the same as the Red Army crossing the snowy mountains. However, The Red Army still managed to get there in the end, and they successfully joined forces in northern Shaanxi. Then, as the swordbearers who possessed all kinds of advanced technology, it would be much easier for them to get to the Taiyin Star from the north than it was for the Red Army back then. With this in mind, Guhan decided to start his search from the north. Of course, Guhan didn't need to walk. He only needed to sit in his flying droplet and travel at a speed of 50 kilometers per hour. However, it was undoubtedly a very difficult thing to search for traces of Ashima and the others with his own eyes. This required Guhan to cover the entire North Road like a sweeping robot. At the same time, it was extremely easy to get visual fatigue if he used his eyes to observe the snow for a long time. After searching like this for more than an hour, Guhan couldn't help but feel sleepy. It would be great if I had a radar. Guhan thought of this divine search device from before the apocalypse. His personal terminal also had a simple radar search function. Unfortunately, this function was suppressed in Shanghai Pass and couldn't be used. But unexpectedly, when Guhan said the word radar, the flying droplet suddenly sent a piece of information to Guhan's mind. Only then did Guhan discover to his surprise that the flying droplet also came with a radar system that could be activated with just a thought. Therefore, Guhan immediately activated the flying droplet's radar system. Probably because it was prehistoric technology, it wasn't suppressed by the Ju Tian star dipper formation and could be used normally. It covered a distance of 50 kilometers, and as long as it was alive, nothing would be able to escape the detection of this radar. With the help of this radar, it was very easy for Guhan to track them down. He only needed to choose the most suitable path in the middle and go all the way, and he could cover more than half of Changbai Mountain. He didn't have to worry about not being able to find traces of Ashima and the others. The pursuit went on for a full 7 hours, but halfway through, Guhan realized something was wrong. In an extreme environment like the snow, it was already very impressive for an ordinary person to be able to travel 2 to 3 kilometers in an hour. His 7-hour pursuit was equivalent to Ashima and the others' 10 days of travel. How could they have traveled so far? Could it be that they could open their dimensional pockets, and there was a hover car inside for them to use? That was absolutely impossible. To open a dimensional pocket, one must have the sword essence. If one had the sword essence, he could release his own sword mistress. If he could release his own sword mistress, why would it take him more than 100 stabs to kill a Wu people? To deal with a junior magus like the Wu people, any famous sword mistress would be able to stab him with a sword. Did I miss something? Guhan fell into deep self-doubt again. The key points about time, speed, Wu people's corpses, sword essence, and so on kept lingering in his mind. Suddenly, with a flash of inspiration, Guhan realized what he had missed. Guhan realized that he had missed the point of eating. As a swordsman, he didn't have to worry about eating at all. The reason was simple. Every swordsman's dimensional pocket would have enough food to last them for at least 3 years, so they didn't have to worry about eating at all. Naturally, Guhan didn't consider this problem. But the truth was that Ashima and the others could no longer use their sword essence, so their dimensional pockets naturally couldn't be opened either. If they couldn't open their dimensional pockets, they wouldn't be able to eat the food in them. If they took the northern route, it would take more than 10 or even 20 days to cross mountains and ridges, and these swordsmen would starve to death along the way. Therefore, these swordsmen definitely wouldn't take the northern route. On the contrary, if they took the southern route, as long as they could survive the first 5 days, they would be able to enter North Korea, which wasn't covered in snow and ice. North Korea had always been a paradise for wild animals and plants. There were neither humans nor Yuan Ku there, so there was naturally an abundance of wild animals and plants. In the eyes of the starving swordsman, these were naturally the most delicious food. Having understood this, Guhan immediately changed the direction of the droplet and began to head south. Guhan's radar showed tens of thousands of different wild animals running wantonly over the land within a 50-kilometer radius, but there was no trace of any humans. Could it be that Guhan's speculation was wrong again? But apart from the northern and southern routes, where else could Ashima and the others take? The western route was completely suicidal for the Wu people, while the eastern route was the vast ocean, which was getting further and further away from the human camp. Wait. Guhan finally understood that he had made a fundamental mistake. Before this, Guhan had always thought that Ashima and the others' ultimate goal was to return to the human camp in Shanhai Pass, so they only had two paths to choose from, the southern and northern routes. But in reality, why did they have to return to the human camp in Shanhai Pass? They just needed to break free from the suppression of the Ju-Tien Star Battle Formation. As mentioned before, Changbai Mountain was at the border of the Ju-Tien Star Battle Formation. As long as they went east and crossed Changbai Mountain, they would reach the eastern barrier of the Ju-Tien Star Battle Formation. This barrier was set up specifically for the Wu people, so it was impossible for the Wu people's bodies to pass through it. This was the hard truth that the Wu people had figured out after being suppressed into the Ju-Tien Star Battle Formation for decades. Under normal circumstances, the Wu people would never waste time getting close to these barriers. But Ashima and the others were different. They were humans, and these barriers were meaningless to humans. It was like a dimensional barrier. As long as you were a real human, you could pass through this barrier without any hindrance. It would take 5 days to reach North Korea by the southern route, but it would take less than 3 days to pass through the barrier of the Ju-Tien Star Battle Formation by the eastern route. As long as they passed through this barrier, the sword bearers would be able to use their sword maidens again, open their dimensional pockets, and eat the sumptuous food they had prepared in advance. They could also use their hovercrafts to move around at high speeds. Therefore, there was no doubt that when Ashima and the others were presented with such a choice, they would definitely choose the eastern route and break free from the restriction of the Ju-Tien Star Battle Formation. If that was the case, there was a new problem. It had been 6 days since Ashima and the others went missing, but it would only take them 3 days to pass through the barrier. However, they only needed 3 days to pass through the barrier. Logically speaking, Ashima's people should have left the Heavenly Cycle Star Formation 3 days ago. The moment they left the Heavenly Cycle Star Formation, Ashima and the others should be able to regain contact with the Sword Council and report the news that they were safe. But why hadn't there been any news from them after 6 days? Could it be that they had died on the way? With this question in mind, Ji Yuhan immediately rushed towards the east road without stopping. As expected, as Guhan got closer and closer to the barrier of the Ju-Tien Star Battle Formation, many clues gradually appeared on the radar. First, Guhan found a few discarded clothes. These clothes were human junk. These junk were obviously newly discarded by the sword bearers in order to have a lighter burden. Next, Guhan found the skeleton of a baihu, but there was still fresh flesh on the bones, so it was obvious that it had just been slaughtered. There was also a bonfire next to the baihu skeleton. From this, Guhan could tell that a group of humans had set up a bonfire here 3 to 4 days ago and killed this baihu. Without a doubt, this was definitely left behind by Ashima and the others. At this point, Guhan felt more and more excited. He felt that he was getting closer and closer to Ashima and the others. But when Guhan finally reached the edge of the barrier, a tragic battlefield made Guhan fall into endless anger. It was a battlefield full of human corpses. Guhan found a total of 17 human corpses on the battlefield, which was less than a kilometer in radius. There were only 18 people in Ashima's team. Chapter 892. The corpses were in a miserable state. Most of them did not have a full body. Instead, they had been torn into a few or even a dozen pieces. This was very much in line with the style of the Wu people. In fact, apart from the 17 human corpses, Guhan also found the corpses of 5 Wu people. Guhan specially checked the corpses of the Wu people and found that their weapons were the weapons that could cause fatal injuries to humans. Moreover, their nails and skin were also stained with human blood and flesh. It seemed that the Wu people were the ones who killed these humans. Apart from that, Guhan did not find any traces of other races on the battlefield. The battle only happened between the human sword-bearers and the Wu people. Guhan could almost simulate the entire battle in his mind. After the human sword-bearers went through a difficult journey for 3 days, they finally saw the barrier of the Ju-Tien Star Battle Formation that they had been looking forward to for a long time. Unfortunately, at the last moment, these human sword-bearers encountered 5 Wu people. No one knew why the Wu people would appear here. Perhaps this was just a daily patrol by the Wu people. However, no matter what the reason was, the 5 Wu people still collided with the swordbearers. After that, there was nothing much to say. The Wu people and the swordbearers started a bloody battle. In the end, the human swordbearers who had lost their sword elements all died tragically in the hands of the Wu people. However, the 5 Wu people also gave up their lives. In fact, the result of this battle was very unscientific. Facing 18 swordbearers who had lost their sword elements, even 2 intermediate sorcerers from the Wu people could easily destroy these humans, let alone 5 intermediate sorcerers from the Wu people. Just like when Guhan and the others landed on the Tai Wei star, the arrogant Wu people only sent 2 intermediate sorcerers to deal with Guhan and the others. However, these 5 Wu people died together with all the other swordbearers in the end. They even left their corpses here. This meant that their blood essence had been sucked away and did not return to Zhu Wu's blood essence. Just like the Wu people who had died in the Star Shuttle. Obviously, among these 18 people, one of them also had a sword wielder who could absorb Wu people's blood essence. This swordbearer was most likely the one who had killed the 5 Wu people and disappeared in the end. After collecting all 17 corpses, Guhan quickly found out which swordbearer had survived. It was Ashima. The Virgin of Jerusalem's corpse was not among the 17. This outcome made Guhan feel slightly relieved. As long as Ashima was still alive, Jerusalem would not go completely berserk. Next, Guhan took out dozens of sacks from his dimensional pocket and put the corpses of the sword-bearers into the empty sacks, storing them in his dimensional pocket. These were all heroes who had sacrificed themselves for humanity. He could not let their corpses rot in this silent land. He had to bring them back to the Guardian's mansion and give them a dignified burial. In the end, Guhan also picked up 50 sword maidens. These were all man-made sword maidens. The remaining sword maiden was a natural one. The natural sword maiden had the ability to automatically return to the sword pavilion, so that sword maiden should have already returned to the sword pavilion. While Guhan was cleaning up the battlefield, Guhan made a surprising discovery. Guhan found a continuous trail of blood. It should have been left behind by a human who was running. This trail of blood extended all the way to the other side of the mountain. It was obviously left behind by Ashima who had escaped. He believed that as long as he followed this trail of blood, he would definitely be able to find traces of Ashima. Therefore, after cleaning up the battlefield, Guhan took the Gu Black Tortoise and followed the trail of blood. This chase covered a distance of more than 10 kilometers. Ashima, who was heavily injured, actually managed to escape for more than 10 kilometers before finally escaping into a pitch-black cave. This made Guhan feel strange. The battlefield was clearly less than a kilometer or 2 away from the barrier. As long as Ashima escaped outside the barrier, she would be able to regain her strength and return to a safe area. However, Ashima did not choose to escape. Instead, she followed the remnants of Changbai Mountain and finally escaped into a cave in the mountain. Looking at this pitch-black cave, Ji Han did not know what was inside. Why did Ashima purposely escape into this cave? Would there be great danger in this cave? Alright. Guhan did not care about the danger. Finding Ashima and understanding the truth was what Guhan desired. Therefore, Guhan did not hesitate to enter the cave with the Gu Black Tortoise. After entering the cave, Guhan discovered that the cave was not naturally formed. This was because there were traces of axe cuts on both sides of the cave. It was obvious that this cave was forcefully carved out by tools. Apart from being relatively dark, this cave did not seem to be dangerous. Guhan walked forward and soon reached the end of the cave. Compared to the simple cave that was previously dug out, the end of the cave was deliberately decorated. The surrounding walls were flattened, forming a space similar to a small room. On one of the walls of this small room, there was a mural painted with colored paint. This mural was actually a rocket that shot into the sky. On one side of the rocket was written the word East Wind. Next to the rocket was a control room. There seemed to be a person standing in the control room, operating something on the control room's computer. Isn't this the mural in my house? The Gu Black Tortoise, who had been following behind Guhan, jumped in surprise at the first sight of this mural. You also have this mural in your house? Guhan's eyelids twitched as he asked. Yes. It is placed in the most conspicuous position in my house. However, my mother has never looked at this mural. It is as though this mural does not exist. The GU Black Tortoise recalled very seriously. This means that this cave is actually related to your house. Guhan squinted his eyes. Although you have always asked me to go to your house to see your mother, you have never told me about your family's situation. I only know that your house is hidden in a dimensional rift in the Shanghai Pass. Can you tell me in detail now? All right. Anyway, you will have to come in sooner or later. The GU Black Tortoise made an indifferent gesture. How should I put it? The dimensional rift that my house is located in is called the Radiance Amusement Park. In fact, it is an amusement park. There is a candy house, a music theater, a beautiful garden, an elemental hall, a Ferris wheel, a roller coaster, a freefall pendulum, a merry-go-round, an ancient tomb, a dinosaur planet, an ocean amusement park, a super cinema, a large gymnasium, and so on. In any case, this amusement park has everything that a normal amusement park should have. In the entire amusement park, apart from our family, there are about 1,000 residents and 30 to 40,000 purebred humans. We give these humans protection, and similarly, the humans use the resources that they produce to support us. In short, life in the amusement park is very good. There is no hunger, and there is no struggle for power. If it was not to find you, I might not even want to leave my house for the rest of my life. My mother is the general manager of this amusement park and is considered the boss of the entire amusement park. Although there is a CEO above her, I have never seen this CEO before. I have not even heard of this CEO's name. However, the other people in the amusement park seem to know of this CEO's existence, but they have never been willing to tell me who this CEO is. That is the general situation. You can slowly explore the specifics after you enter. The GU Black Tortoise concluded his explanation of the Radiance Amusement Park. What about this mural? Does this mural only exist in your house? Guhan's focus seemed to be on the mural. That is not necessarily the case. The GU Black Tortoise shook his head. There are a lot of murals in the amusement park, but I have never been interested in these murals since I was young, so I have never paid attention to them. Perhaps one of these murals is exactly the same as the one in your house. Then, is this mural the same as the one in your house? Is there any other difference? Guhan continued to ask. Different. The GU Black Tortoise raised his head and thought for a moment. Then, he patted his head. That's right. On the side of the mural, there are a lot of inexplicable symbols that form words. I can't understand these symbols at all. It seems to be some kind of mysterious ancient language. Each symbol is only the size of an ant, and they are densely packed on the wall. It is very uncomfortable to look at. Inexplicable symbols? Guhan's eyes kept lingering on the mural. Suddenly, Guhan took out a pen from his dimensional pocket and began to write directly on the wall. Seeing Guhan's strange actions, the GU Black Tortoise naturally went up to him. Soon, she was surprised to find that Guhan was actually writing the inexplicable symbols in her memory. Although the GU Black Tortoise had a headache with these symbols, she had never tried to remember these symbols. But because she had seen it many times, she still remembered the first few symbols. After a little comparison, she found that the symbols written by Guhan completely overlapped with the symbols in her memory. Could it be that Guhan had seen the mural in his house before and remembered all these symbols? The GU Black Tortoise instinctively guessed. No. The GU Black Tortoise shook his head. Maybe it wasn't Guhan who saw these symbols and remembered them. These symbols might have been written down by Guhan himself. If this is the case, then Guhan has further solidified his identity as his father. His biological father is Guhan. Regardless of what the GU Black Tortoise was thinking at this time, when Guhan finished writing the last symbol, the entire wall bloomed with a dazzling light. Then, the pictures and symbols began to slowly blur, and a film-like light door appeared in front of Guhan. This is our Radiance Amusement Park's magic door. Seeing this light door, the GU Black Tortoise said in disbelief. What will happen after entering this magic door? Guhan asked. Nothing much, just going home, the GU Black Tortoise said. Chapter 893. Indeed, just like Jiyu Black Tortoise, this door of light was the entrance to his home. When Guhan stepped through the door, what appeared before him was a world that Guhan had never seen before. The sky was as clear as crystal, and the grass was so green that it could drip water. There was a sweet smell in the air, and the colors of the entire world were so bright and vibrant. The first impression it gave people was that they had arrived at a paradise. Compared to the dark and murderous apocalypse outside, this place was like a paradise. It made Guhan, who had come here for the first time, feel an urge to live here for a long time. This was a beautiful world that could make people happy. However, Guhan vaguely felt that he had seen this world somewhere before. That world was even more beautiful than this one, but it was a pity that it was destroyed and turned into a pile of dirty black water. Strange. This door of light is actually the door to the Norland Plains. Why didn't I know of the existence of this door of light? Jiyu Black Tortoise seemed to be in a bad mood. You didn't know of the existence of this door of light? Guhan asked. Yes. If I hadn't followed you this time, I would never have thought that there would be a door of light that could lead me home. In fact, I always thought that there were only 2 doors of light that I could enter and exit freely. One was in the Greater Khingan Mountains, and the other was in Hulu and Buir. Of course, there was also a one-way exit in Hulu Island, which was the way for me to directly leave Shanghai Pass and enter the world outside the Jutian Star Battle Formation. At this point, Jiyu Black Tortoise was a little angry. Mom actually never told me that there was a door of light that connected the Norland Plains to Changbai Mountain. Do I need to write a long series of programs like I did to open the other 2 doors of light? Guhan couldn't help but feel a headache when he recalled the process of opening the door. If it wasn't for his good memory and the long series of programs from a few months ago, he wouldn't have been able to open this door of light for the rest of his life. That's not it. I just need to chant the incantation, Jiyu Black Tortoise said as he cleared his throat. Eat salted fish without spitting out salted fish bones. Don't eat salted fish but spit out salted fish bones. Once a salted fish, every time a salted fish are all unlucky. My universe dynasty is so beautiful. What the hell are you chanting? A few black lines appeared on Guhan's head. Spell. Jiyu Xuanwu chuckled. Actually, I do not know what this means, but if you want to open the door of light, then you must first learn this incantation. This incantation isn't something that anyone can learn. Only someone with a unique talent like me can learn this incantation and open the light door. Alright. No matter who wrote this worrisome incantation, it seemed to have reached Jiyu Xuanwu's house. Although this wasn't part of Guhan's plan, he had at least fulfilled his promise to Jiyu Xuanwu. Didn't you say this is an amusement park? Why don't I see any rides? As far as the eye could see, Guhan could only see a boundless grassland. There was no sign of the radiant amusement park that the Black Tortoise had mentioned. I told you this is the Norland grassland. Of course it's an endless grassland. Jiyu Xuanwu rolled his eyes at Guhan. The Radiant Amusement Park is located in the center of this world, but it only takes up about 1% of the world's surface area. Apart from the Radiant Amusement Park, there are many beautiful natural sceneries and a radiant city built by humans. You are now in the outermost Norland grassland of this world. You will see the Bright Moon Lake in about 10 minutes walk. After the Bright Moon Lake, you will see the Radiant City. After that, you will reach the Radiant Amusement Park. How can you see the Radiant Amusement Park from here? Wait. Guhan suddenly squatted down and bent over to look at the grassland beside his feet. He found that there were drops of bright red on the dark green grass. If someone had not spilled paint here, then this color could only be caused by fresh blood. Ashima has also entered this place, Guhan said solemnly. In fact, Guhan had suspected that Ashima might have escaped into the world of the Radiant Amusement Park. Otherwise, it would be hard to explain why the blood completely disappeared after reaching the cave. That's impossible. Jiyu Xuanwu immediately jumped up and retorted. I don't even know the way to open this magical light door. How could a human like her open the light door of my house? What's impossible about it? Aren't I also a human? Didn't I open this magical light door of yours? Guhan said calmly. This is different. Jiyu Xuanwu's face turned red. You are my father. Of course you know the way to open the door. But who is that woman called Ashima? How could she know the way? Oh, I understand now. Jiyu Xuanwu suddenly made a disdainful expression. That woman must be that damned mistress. Maybe she was the reason why you abandoned your mother and escaped from Guangguang amusement park. That's why that woman knew the way to open the door of light. That must be it. Faced with Jiyu Xuanwu's wild imagination, Gu Han did not know what to say. But in fact, Jiyu Xuanwu's wild imagination was reasonable, logical, and convincing. If it was not for the fact that Gu Han knew very well that he had never been here and had nothing to do with Ashima, Gu Han would have thought that Jiyu Xuanwu's guess was right. Let's find Ashima first. Gu Han forcefully interrupted Jiyu Xuanwu's wild imagination and led Jiyu Xuanwu to track the scattered blood traces. Fortunately, the tracking of Ashima finally came to an end here. Jiyu Han finally found Ashima in a patch of grass that had been pressed down. But at this time, Ashima's eyes were closed, her skin was pale, and her body was covered with at least a dozen wounds. Some of the wounds had stopped bleeding, but some were still bleeding. Thank goodness. She's still alive. Gu Han made this judgment after pressing on Ashima's Jacob chest and felt that Ashima still had a weak heartbeat. Jiyu Xuanwu expressed deep disdain for this, then pinched his chest and told himself that he was still young and could continue to develop. Let's save her first. Gu Han immediately took out a medical pod from his dimensional pocket and placed Ashima in it. No matter how serious the injury was, as long as she entered Gu Han's special medical pod, she could be saved. Gu Han was very confident about this. When a new patient entered the medical pod, the first thing the medical pod did was naturally to scan the patient to determine how to treat the patient. The scanning process was very fast, and was completed in about 10 seconds. The patient's data was also displayed on the screen. Gu Han glanced at the data and found that Ashima did not actually have any serious injuries. Her bones were still intact, and her internal organs were all healthy. The biggest problem was that she had lost too much blood. Her body seemed to have lost 70% of its blood. Under normal circumstances, losing 40% of blood would mean certain death. Of course, Ashima was not an ordinary human. Her body had been strengthened by the sword mistress, so it was not unacceptable that she could hold on to this extent. After the scan was completed, the medical pod began to treat Ashima's body automatically. This would take about a few hours, and Gu Han was not interested in waiting for Ashima to be treated. Therefore, he simply released his droplet flying car, intending to use it to bring the medical pod to Radiance Amusement Park quickly. However, something surprising happened. After the droplet flying car was released, Gu Han found that he could not open the door of the droplet flying car. It was as if the droplet flying car had been cut off from him. Could this world be able to suppress the droplet flying car? Gu Han could not help but think of the sword element that was suppressed in the Ju Tian Star battle formation. However, the droplet flying car should be a pure technological product. How could it be suppressed by something? Regardless of whether it was due to the suppression, the droplet flying car could no longer be used. Jiyu Han searched his dimensional pocket again and found that there was no transportation tool in his dimensional pocket that could transport the medical pod. Helpless, he could only carry the medical pod with one hand while following Jiyu Xuanwu's lead in the direction of Radiance Amusement Park. The Norland Plains was indeed a very spectacular and beautiful grassland. All the plants grew very lush and green, and it was probably a favorite of all photography enthusiasts. However, what made Gu Han feel a little awkward was that there was only grass on this grassland, and no other life forms. Not to mention large animals such as cows and sheep, there were no small animals such as wild rabbits, and even simple insects such as grasshoppers. In short, there were no animals at all. After walking for a while, which he found interesting at first, but later became very boring, Gu Han saw the Bright Moon Lake that Jiyu Xuanwu mentioned. It was named Bright Moon Lake, probably because the lake was in the shape of a half-moon. The water of the Bright Moon Lake was very clear, and one could directly see through the water to the bottom of the lake. After all, the lake was about 20 meters deep, and even the shape of a pebble could be clearly seen at the bottom of the lake. From this, one could see how clear the lake was. It was also because the lake was clear enough that Guhan found that the situation of the Bright Moon Lake was the same as the Norland Plains. There was not a single fish. This was also a zone that was completely devoid of life. Whoosh! Just as Guhan was carefully observing the lake, a whining sound suddenly came from afar. Guhan looked up in the direction of the sound, and saw a little lowly gliding freely on the surface of the lake. Her feet splashed through the water like a fairy on the surface of the water. I think I've seen a girl like this before. Guhan licked his lips. Good heavens, isn't this the ship girl that only appears in game dungeons? Yes, that's right, not a sword girl, but a ship girl. Chapter 894. For a long time, the ship girl had been a Yuan Ku with many different opinions. Many humans and sword-bearers firmly said that the ship girl Yuan Ku existed in this world. Their ancestors had come into contact with the ship girl and fought with her. The ship girl Yuan Ku really existed in this world. Even Sword Maiden Online had a crusade dungeon like Shenyuan Guardian Mansion, which meant that Sword Maiden Online recognized the ship girl's existence. But most humans and sword-bearers firmly believed that the ship girl did not exist in this world. The reason was that a reporter once asked Kanzu what he thought of the ship girl. Then Kanzu told the reporter very firmly that the ship girl did not exist in this world. In fact, except for some oral accounts and the memoirs left behind by the sword-bearers, there was no other evidence of the ship girl's existence. Not to mention a video, there was not even a picture. In fact, only the first generation of sword-bearers after the apocalypse claimed to have seen the ship girl. But since the death of Kanzu, there was no trace of the ship girl in this world, so it became a legend that later generations of scholars painstakingly studied. Unexpectedly, the final answer to this question appeared in front of Guhan. After a living ship girl glided on the lake for a long time, she finally galloped all the way to Guhan and Jiyu Xuanwu. With a slight leap, she jumped ashore. And the propulsion device on her feet instantly disappeared during the jump, turning into a pair of cute leather boots. Big Turtle, why do you have time to come here to play? I heard that you eloped with another man. The cute little ship girl said to Jiyu Xuanwu in a bright voice. In terms of body shape, the ship girl was the same size as Qing Pin, a standard lowly. But compared to Qing Pin, who only knew how to eat, this ship girl was a little smarter. There was always a bright light in her eyes, full of all kinds of mischievous ideas. She wore a navy officer's cap on her head and a blue and white Mongolian short jacket with fluff on her body. She was simply adorable. Su Ritian, you have to make it clear to me today. What do you mean I eloped with another man? I'm going to beat you to death. Jiyu Xianwu was so angry that smoke was coming out of his head, he reached out and pulled out his devil bullet spear, and aimed it at the ship girl's small head. Help! Help! The warship girl called Su Ritian rolled her eyes. She did a cute roll on the grass and went behind Jiyu Han. He climbed onto Guhan's shoulder and stuck his head out. He pointed at Guhan's temple and shouted arrogantly, "Hit here. Hit me if you have the guts. If I, Su Ritian, was afraid of you, Big Turtle, I wouldn't be called Su Ritian. Is this the ship girl?" Guhan's curiosity about the ship girl was instantly reduced by half. Instead of saying that she was a ship girl, it was better to say that she was Qing Pin's good sister. The two of them were surprisingly similar in climbing up Guhan's body. Xian Wu, since you don't like her, I'll help you kill her. Guhan's hand slipped backward and grabbed Su Ritian. He then took out Qing Pin's sword and placed it on Su Ritian's neck. It looked like he was killing a chicken. Help! Help! Big Turtle, hurry up and control your man. I haven't unified the sea yet. I haven't snatched all of Flowing Maple's women. I don't want to die yet. Sob sob sob, please let me go. I don't want to die yet. After all, this Su Ritian was still a little lowly. After being threatened by Jiyu Han's sword on his neck, he started to cry. If anyone saw this scene, they would immediately call 110 and report it to the police. The reason was that a pervert was abducting a little lowly. Guhan, hurry up and let him go. Jiyu Xianwu saw that Guhan did not seem to be joking and immediately said nervously, "She's my good friend. We're used to playing around. Please don't hurt her." According to legend, The ship girl was the only Yuan Ku that had never really hurt a human. It was said that during the earliest period of the apocalypse, it was because of the ship girl that humans in the coastal areas could survive. She also became the most important citizen when Kanzu established Beijing base city. If Su Riqian was really a ship girl, Guhan had no reason to kill her. Coupled with Jiyu Xianwu's persuasion, Guhan loosened his grip and threw Su Riqian to the ground. Bastard! Bastard! How dare you bully such a cute person like me? I'll kick you to death. As soon as Su Riqian was freed, she immediately ran to Guhan's feet and lifted her calf leather boots to kick Guhan's leg. Unfortunately, Su Riqian was not as good as her name suggested. When she kicked Guhan's leg, it felt like a kitten or a puppy. Let's go. Although Guhan had a lot of questions about this ship girl, he still wanted to enter Guangguang amusement park and meet Jiyu Xianwu's mother. Who was this woman who claimed to have given birth to Jiyu Xianwu? Are you guys leaving now? Su Zhiqian, who was still trying hard to kick Guhan, heard Guhan's words and immediately stopped. She looked at Jiyu Xianwu in surprise and dissatisfaction. Big tortoise, you've only been here for a few minutes. Why are you leaving now? I'm sorry, I have to bring him to see my mother. You know, my mother might not be able to hold on for much longer. Jiyu Xianwu lowered her head. The closer they got to Guangguang amusement park, the heavier her heart became. She was afraid that when she returned home, she would hear the news of her mother's death. She even wanted to stay outside forever, so that she would never know about her mother's situation and that her mother would be able to live forever. Then at least eat a fish before you leave. Su Riqian hugged Jiyu Xianwu's leg and looked at Jiyu Xianwu with tears in her eyes. Perhaps she was touched by Su Riqian's tears. Jiyu Xianwu looked at Guhan with a troubled expression, but she did not say anything. It was obvious that she was telling Su Riqian that her words did not count, only Guhan's words counted. I beg you. Su Riqian immediately hugged Guhan's leg without any sense of shame, not caring about the wet footprints she left on Guhan's leg. Are there fish in this lake? Guhan did not care about Su Riqian's pitiful gaze, he only cared about the fishing that Su Riqian mentioned. Just now, Guhan looked carefully several times and found that there was not a single fish in the lake. How did this Su Riqian catch a fish? She did not mention fishing before. How long will it take to catch a fish? Guhan asked. A few minutes. A few minutes is enough. Su Riqian immediately replied excitedly. The fish in this lake are very stupid. Every time I catch one, I'll show you guys. With that, Su Riqian left Guhan's thigh and jumped directly into the lake. Of course, Su Riqian did not sink into the lake. Her leather boots once again became a pair of water propellers, allowing Su Riqian to stand steadily on the water. At the same time, a set of strange-looking equipment suddenly appeared on her back. It was a crane arm that was raised high, and at the top of the crane arm was a steel cable. The other end of the steel cable was hung with a ship hook. The whole set of equipment looked like it was unique to a tugboat. Because Guhan had come into contact with ship girls in the game, and had even fought with King Kong, Snow Wind, Jin Yuan and other ship girls, he was not unfamiliar with ship girls. He knew that the reason why ship girls were called ship girls was because they all had a full set of ship girl equipment on their back, which could transform into cannons, airplanes, missiles, and other magical equipment. Some ship girls' strength was even comparable to spirit sword girls, such as Jin Yuan who had fought with Guhan. Guhan had also heard that in the depths of the Pacific Ocean, there were invincible ship girls that were comparable to Emperor sword girls. But it was the first time that Guhan had seen a ship girl like Su Riqian, who had such an amazing name, but was actually a set of crane equipment. Su Riqian, her real name is Sukbeta, and she is the flagship of the Mongolian Navy. But she is not used to fight, but to protect and rescue ships in the lake. So unlike other ship girls, Sukbeta doesn't have any weapons on her back, only a set of hoisting equipment. It's just that this set of hoisting equipment is often used by her to fish. Jiyu Xuanwu whispered in Guhan's ear. Sure enough, just as Jiyu Xuanwu said, Su Riqian's set of equipment that looked like a crane was actually used by her to fish. She threw the huge hook into the water, and the seawater under her but automatically rose against gravity, forming a small stool made of seawater. Su Riqian sat on this small stool very leisurely, humming a song and waiting for the stupid fish to take the bait. Even if there was really a fish in this lake, that fish was stupid enough. But did this fish have the ability to swallow such a big hook? This Su Ritien couldn't be trying to catch a shark, right? Guhan shook his head in his heart and decided to give Su Ritien 5 minutes. If she couldn't catch a fish in 5 minutes, he would leave immediately. He would never play with this ship girl who seemed to be a little crazy. But in fact, it didn't take 5 minutes at all. The fishing line in Su Ritien's hand, which was the steel cable, suddenly trembled violently. Su Ritien himself could no longer sit leisurely on the surface of the lake. With a solemn expression, he controlled the crane behind him, constantly loosening and tightening the steel cable. It was obvious that he was entangled with the big fish in the lake. Fishing was like this, especially when catching a big fish. You had to constantly relax and tighten the steel cable to consume the big fish's physical strength. When the big fish's physical strength was exhausted, it would be very easy to pull the big fish up. Otherwise, relying on one's own strength to fight against the big fish, then there was a great chance that the hook would be broken. After all, the fish's mouth was long, and it would be very easy to break free from the hook. After entangling with each other for a few minutes, the speed of the big fish's struggle in the lake obviously slowed down. Su Ritien also began to slowly tighten the steel cable, ready to pull the big fish up. And Guhan also stared at Su Ritien attentively, wanting to see what kind of big fish was in this lake that clearly had no fish. Chapter 895. This is a mermaid. Guhan was surprised to find that the last thing Su Ritien fished up was actually a mermaid. A mermaid with long dark blue hair, a dark blue fishtail, and a dark blue bra on her upper body. In any case, except for her skin, the rest of her body was blue. Although this mermaid was fished up by Su Ritien, her mouth was still firmly biting the hook. Her expression was intoxicated by the delicious taste. Even if there was a possibility that she would be eaten alive and cooked in the future, she was still unwilling to give up the bait in her mouth. What a stupid fish. After being dried in the sun, it would become a good salted fish. This Quincy. She was actually fished up again. Jiyu Xuanwu also seemed to recognize this mermaid's name as Quincy. When he saw that she was fished up, he was very calm, as if he already knew that Quincy would be fished up. Let's go. This time, Jiyu Xuanwu took the initiative to pull Guhan away. Why should we go? I think it's quite interesting, Guhan said with a smile, not even moving his feet. What? Do you really want to eat sashimi? Jiyu Xuanwu said helplessly. Haha. It's too late. You can't leave even if you want to. While Guhan and Jiyu Xuanwu were talking, Su Ritien removed the fish hook from Quincy's mouth and then carried Quincy's body on his shoulder like a rocket launcher. Quincy's body and Su Ritien's body were actually the same size, so it created a very funny feeling. When Guhan saw this, he couldn't help but open his mouth and laugh. You're actually still laughing. Seeing Guhan's smile, Su Ritien was obviously even angrier. He pointed the silly face of Quincy on his shoulder at Guhan and snorted a few times, as if he was cheering for himself. Then he gathered all the strength in his body and shouted with a sharp lowly voice, "You're finished. I'll let you taste the power of Earth's strongest cannon, Quincy Cannon." Earth's strongest cannon? Quincy Cannon? Could it be that the Quincy on Su Ritien's shoulder was actually not a mermaid, but a cannon shaped like a mermaid? Hearing this, Guhan could not help but be a little cautious. Even a lion would go all out to capture a rabbit. This Su Ritien looked crazy, but she was an extremely mysterious ship girl. No one knew what kind of power she had. Maybe the Kunxi cannon in her hands was really powerful. In order to express his caution, Jiyu Han even deliberately held his strongest sword Maiden, the Chijian sword, in his hand. Once he discovered that the Kunxi cannon's power wasn't right, he could immediately counterattack and send it back into the dimensional vortex. Looking at the mermaid-shaped Quincy cannon, Guhan felt a little nervous. Sigh. Jiyu Xuanwu let out a long sigh, then silently walked behind Jiyu Han and squatted down. What did the black tortoise mean by this? Could it be that the power of the Quincy cannon was so terrifying that even standing beside Guhan could cause one to be hit? Could it be that hiding behind Guhan and using Guhan as a meat shield was the only way to be safe? Quincy cannon. Fire! Su Ritian gave an extremely mighty order, then unceremoniously pinched Quincy's exquisite European pie that looked like a steamed bun. This seemed to be the launch button for the Quincy cannon. Quincy, who had a silly smile on her face, immediately opened her mouth, and a dark blue light began to brew in her throat. It grew bigger and bigger, and finally shot out, its power so great that it covered an area of dozens of square meters. F***CK. Splashed with water, Guhan's expression could not be seen. In any case, judging from the fishy smell on his body, Guhan was definitely not in a good mood. I'll leave Chidyen to you. Make it into braised fish or boiled fish, it's up to you. Guhan silently released Chidyen. After some thought, he also released Yi Tian, Duyu, Shishue, and Juzi. Apart from Qing Pin, who was still in a deep sleep, all the sword maidens appeared. Mongolian navy above. Su Ritian tightly covered her mouth, unable to believe her eyes. Su Ritian actually saw the treasured swords turn into beautiful girls. Then, these beautiful girls fiercely surrounded Su Ritian, one on the left and one on the right. After her hands and feet touched Su Ritian's body, she was tied up like a hairy crab, and her hands and feet were all tied together. Help! Su Ritian weakly shouted. Only then did she realize that she seemed to have encountered an incredible existence, and her good days seemed to have ended. Pervert! On the other side, Jiyu Black Tortoise shyly turned his body, not daring to look behind him. Because after Guhan only reminded Jiyu Black Tortoise, he began to take off his clothes. Jiyu Black Tortoise naturally knew that this was because Guhan could not stand the fishy smell on his body, so he could only change into the clean clothes in his dimensional pocket. But this Guhan was too shameless. Didn't he see that his daughter was right beside him? How could he just change clothes like this? He should at least let him run a little further away. Right, other daughters have bathed with their fathers when they were young. There shouldn't be so many taboos between father and daughter. Maybe I can see what father's body looks like. Just as Jiyu Black Tortoise was about to secretly turn his head to take a look, Guhan's palm had already patted Jiyu Black Tortoise's shoulder. Guhan changed into new clothes at lightning speed. I was wrong. Don't eat me. My body is full of the smell of oil. It's disgusting. If you don't believe me, lick my face. Seeing Guhan, whose hair was still a little wet, walk in front of him with a fierce look, Su Ritian said weakly like a little submissive. I'll ask you a few questions. If you answer me truthfully, I'll let you go. How about that? Guhan said to Su Ritian expressionlessly. No problem. Su Ritian nodded repeatedly, indicating that he would answer the question honestly and strive for leniency from the government. Let me ask you, why are you here? Where are the other ship girls? Guhan asked the question that had been on his mind the most. I was originally going back to my hometown to visit my family, but on the way back, I got hungry and wanted to find something to eat. Then, for some reason, I ended up here. I can't even get out. Su Ritian said with a heartbroken expression. Is that so? Guhan turned to look at Jiyu Black Tortoise. From what Sister Yun said, it does seem to be the case. When they first came here, Su Ritian was already here. She should have arrived here earlier than us. Jiyu Black Tortoise replied. Then where are the other ship girls? I don't know. Su Ritian said dejectedly. We originally came to this world for a vacation, but Fleeting Maple refused to buy me a lollipop. I bit him, and he chased me away. I was so angry that I went back to my home to sleep, and then I was trapped here. Fleeting Maple said that he would only stay here for 10 years at most. After 10 years, he would return to the ship girls' world. Who knows how many hundreds of years have passed now? They must have left me behind and returned to the ship girls' world. Su Ritian's words seemed to match the historical records. All the active records of the ship girls were between 2050 and 2060, with a gap of 10 years. According to Su Ritian, these ship girls had indeed come to this world before. However, unlike those damned Yuan Ku who came here and never went back, these ship girls came here purely as tourists. After 10 years, they returned to their own world and disappeared from the sight of humans. Although this perfectly solved the mystery of the ship girls' disappearance, a new problem emerged. These ship girls could open up a dimensional vortex on their own, Guhan and Misaka Mikoto had spent a lot of time together, and he had confirmed many questions about Yuan-ku from Misaka Mikoto. For example, Misaka Mikoto had clearly told Guhan that if it was possible, they were willing to pay any price to return to their own world. In reality, unless they died in this world, no Yuan-ku would be able to open up their own dimensional vortex and return to their own dimension. Even the flood level and desolate level Yuan-ku could tear open the dimension and enter the dimensional gap. However, the dimensional gap was filled with endless dimensional spaces. They would not be able to find their own dimension in the dimensional gap even if they exhausted all their energy. It was not that Yuan-ku did not want to go back, but that Yuan-ku could not unless they chose to become a corpse. At this time, Ji Yuhan suddenly remembered that he could do business with the Yuenko. That was because his Chijian sword had the ability to open up a dimensional vortex without killing Yuan-ku. If some of the Yuan-ku really wanted to return to their own world, he did not have to fight those Yuan-ku at all. All he had to do was explain the situation and those Yuan-ku would be happily sent back to their own world. Of course, this was just Guhan's imagination. It was not easy to convince Yuan-ku that he had the ability to open up a dimensional vortex. Most importantly, be it humans or Yuan-hun, they couldn't be sure that the other side of the dimensional vortex was indeed the Yuan-hun's original world. This was what the sword ancestor had told the humans back then. As for the humans themselves, they had never been able to verify what kind of world it was on the other side of the dimensional vortex. Su Ritian suddenly told Guhan that the ship girl had mastered the method to travel between dimensions. This was a big deal. If they could master this method, then Guhan believed that the human world would instantly become very different. At least 1/3 of the Yuan-ku could be sent back to their original world. Humans would no doubt face much less pressure. Tell me, how should I send those Yuan-ku home? Guhan asked excitedly. Chapter 896. What? How would I know how to open the gate of termination? Su Ritian looked aggrieved. Only the pacifier can send the fated ones home. However, Fleeting Maple said that the pacifier of this world has failed. This world can only last for 1,000 years before it is destroyed. It is impossible to open the gate of termination. Fated one? Pacifier? Gate of termination? What does that mean? Guhan suddenly discovered that he had come into contact with 3 new terms. These 2 terms were things that he had never heard of before. I know what the fated one means. The fated one is the person who is fated to be. This is what we call ourselves. However, in the outside world, humans call them Yuan-ku. Jiyu Black Tortoise, who was beside Guhan, explained. Yuan-ku actually had another name. Guhan felt a chill run down his spine when he heard the Jiyu Black Tortoise's explanation. He suddenly realized that he had come into contact with something incredible, and it was very likely that he had come into contact with the truth of the world. What about the pacifier? You said that the pacifier is dead. What do you mean by that? Guhan asked impatiently. I don't know. I only care about eating and drinking in this world, but Fleeting Maple is so stingy that he won't even give me a lollipop. What? After that, Su Ritian continued to cry bitterly. Her snot kept flowing down her nose, and then directly flowed down her lips into her mouth. She then swallowed it back down. Fleeting Maple. Seeing that he could not get any information out of Su Ritian, Guhan could only silently analyze the information that he already knew. The most important piece of information was the name Fleeting Maple. Fleeting Maple, another guy with the surname Fleeting. In fact, this was not the first time Guhan had heard of this name. Guhan had heard this name from King Kong and Jin Yuan during the Jinyuan garrison mission. He seemed to have come from another world. He was the leader of all ship girls, and the emperor of all sword girls. This was confirmed by Su Ritian's words. It was Fleeting Maple who opened the door of termination and brought all the ship girls to this world for a day before returning to their own world. Moreover, from Su Ritian's words, it could be deduced that Flowing Time Maple was the other world's pacifier. Only a pacifier could open the door of termination. Fated One, the Leveler. These 2 terms were closely related to each other, and vaguely seemed to hide the future of the entire world. If Flowing Maple said that this world stabilizer had failed, then that meant that there should be another stabilizer in his world. Could it be that Flowing Maple's world had suffered the same fate as his world? However, Fleeting Maple had managed to survive, and he could even bring his shipgirl to play in other worlds. However, the stabilizer of this world had failed, and it would be destroyed in 1,000 years. Could it be that the stabilizer was similar to the concept of a savior? That's right. Peace. It meant to pacify the world and pacify the chaotic times. The pacifier must be the hero who wants to save the world, the savior of the entire world. Wasn't the era when Flowing Time Maple came to this world 1,000 years ago when the Great Kanzu existed? Until now, there had not been a single sword wielder who could surpass Kanzu's achievements. He was still the strongest sword wielder, the invincible emperor. If Kanzu had not died, then Yuan Ku would not have been so arrogant. Under Kanzu's leadership, humanity would have decided to retaliate and kill all of the Yuan Kus, returning peace to the world. However, Kanzu still disappeared in the end, because of the creation divinity. After Kanzu disappeared, all of the shipgirls disappeared as well. Could it be that this was the failure that Flowing Time Maple had mentioned? Because Kanzu had disappeared, the pacifier had failed. The most important thing was the last sentence that Su Ritien said. She said that the stabilizer had failed, and the world would be destroyed in 1,000 years at most. Counting with his fingers, there were only 57 years left before the disappearance of the Swordmaster. Would the world be destroyed in 57 years? And that Flowing Time Maple's surname was Fleeting, and Fleeting Time's surname was also Fleeting. Was this just a coincidence? Or was there something else that could not be told? Ji Yuhan's brain continued to ponder. He realized that if what Su Ritien said was true, then the human race would be destroyed in 57 years. Was this possible? While Guhan was deep in thought, Quincy, who had been struggling on the ground, slowly approached Su Ritien. While no one was paying attention to her, she bit off the rope binding Su Ritien. Su Ritien, who had been crying all this while, immediately jumped up from the ground the moment the rope was bitten off. He picked up Quincy from the ground and ran away. Stop. Chijian, who was in charge of guarding Su Ritien, immediately reacted and gave chase. Hey! You can't catch up to me. Su Ritien made a face at the starting point. Her current position was very close to the surface of the lake. As long as she touched the surface of the water with the ship's speed, she would immediately disappear without a trace, and Ji Yuhan would not be able to catch her. Damn it! The exasperated Chijian picked up his Chijian sword and threw it out to vent his anger. However, something unexpected happened. Chijian's random throw actually hit Su Ritien's back. Not only did it hit the target, it also smashed into Su Ritien's dimensional node. When Guhan finally reacted, Su Ritien looked up at the sky like a frightened quail. A vortex was slowly opening up in the sky, and the light was shining on Su Ritien's body. The suction force coming from the vortex was trying to suck Su Ritien and the Quincy fish into it. No. I can't let Su Ritien be sucked away by the dimensional vortex. Guhan immediately made a decision. Su Ritien was the only one who could solve the mystery of the pacifier and the fated one. He had to get the truth out of her mouth and find out what Fleeting Maple said about the world only having 1,000 years. Thus, Ji Yuhan immediately rushed to Su Ritien's side and hugged Su Ritien's small body, wanting to forcefully keep Su Ritien's body, but this was undoubtedly a matter that defied the heavens and changed fate. As the suction force continued to increase, Ji Yuhan and Su Ritien's body gradually flew up together. Fortunately, Juzi reacted quickly and hugged Guhan's thigh. Then, it was Flowing Water, Chijian, Duyu, and Heavenly. The rest of the sword ladies around Guhan all followed and grabbed onto Guhan's leg, not letting him fly. This was indeed effective. The Quincy fish quickly entered the vortex, but Su Ritien remained in the air, only slowly approaching the dimensional vortex. Although the 5 sword ladies had used all their strength was unable to contend with the dimensional vortex's source power. They could only slow down the speed, but their frozen bodies still couldn't slow down their ascension. It looked like they were about to enter the dimensional vortex with Su Ritien. Who is it? You actually opened the vortex of my world. Suddenly, a voice came from the other side of the dimensional vortex. This voice sounded quite young, at most the same age as Guhan. "It's me. Boss Military Governor, it's me, Sukbeta. Boss, you finally remembered me and came to pick me up." Sob 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 sob. Su Ritian suddenly cried out in excitement. She called the man on the other side of the dimensional vortex boss. Didn't this mean that the other side of the dimensional vortex was the mysterious man called Fleeting Maple from 1000 years ago? "Where did you run off to, brat? She hasn't let me into her bed for 1000 years. The person on the other side of the dimensional vortex was also very happy. It seemed like Fleeting Maple was deeply pained by the fact that he could not get into the Lianing ship's bed. "Let me go. I want to go home. Let go of me." Su Ritian suddenly began to struggle, trying to break free from the cold that was holding his body. "Friend, since you've opened the dimensional vortex, let my ship lady go." A huge hand suddenly reached out from the dimensional vortex. This hand gently pushed Guhan's body, causing Guhan to involuntarily let go of Su Ritian. Then, he fell to the ground. Su Ritian was directly sucked into the dimensional vortex. Then, the dimensional vortex slowly shrank and was about to close. "Lord Fleeting Maple! Lord Fleeting Maple!" Guhan shouted at the dimensional vortex. "Please tell me, how can I save my world? What should I do? I originally thought that I would never be able to open the dimensional window and find the lost Sukbeta. I didn't expect the door to open by itself. You were the one who sent Sukbeta back to my side. I owe you a favor. Is this that bastard's plan?" Fleeting Maple, who was on the other side of the dimensional vortex, said in a tone that was neither crying nor smiling. "Take this." Just as the dimensional vortex was about to close, an item suddenly flew out. Ji Han took the item into his hands, and upon closer inspection, he discovered that it was a golden red ribbon. However, before Guhan could take a closer look at the ribbon, it drilled into Guhan's fingertip and disappeared into Guhan's body in the blink of an eye. It was as if it had become one with Guhan's body. "This is the last primordial violet haze of your world." Fleeting Maple's voice finally said, "I have already returned the item to its original owner. Whether you can change the fate of your world is up to you. Don't do anything that you will regret. Don't be like a fleeting calendar, ruining your life and your world." The dimensional vortex closed, and the Norland Plains and Bright Moon Lake returned to their original tranquility. Su Ritian left just like that. Jiyu Xuanwu didn't even react to what had just happened. A ship lady that she had grown up with and had existed in this dimensional rift for almost 1000 years was gone just like that. Shouldn't she have at least delayed for 100 or 2 chapters? Chapter 897. Why aren't you saying anything? Are you afraid? After Su Ritian left this world, Guhan had been in a state of silence, carrying the medical pod with Ashima all the way, not saying a single word to Jiyu Black Tortoise. This unbearable silence finally forced Jiyu Black Tortoise to take the initiative to break the silence. "There's nothing that can make me afraid," Guhan said without raising his head. "That dimensional human called Fleeting Maple's casual words aren't enough to make me believe that the world will be destroyed in 50 years. I'm just thinking about who he is, what's the relationship between his world and ours, and what's the primordial purple aura he gave me at the end. Then, have you thought of an answer?" Jiyu Black Tortoise asked with narrowed eyes. "Not at all." Guhan shook his head, "but I have a feeling that he and I are the same kind of person. Perhaps the future of the entire world rests on this primordial purple aura." At this point, Guhan looked at his hand again. This was where the primordial purple aura had entered his body. It was a pity that Guhan couldn't figure out what the primordial purple aura represented even after searching through all his memories. He could only hope that the primordial purple aura could really save the world. After more than 30 minutes of trekking, Guhan and Jiyu Black Tortoise finally saw the edge of Radiant City, as well as the towering Ferris wheel at the center of the city. Clearly, the location of the Ferris wheel was the Radiant Amusement Park that Jiyu Black Tortoise spoke of. To reach the Radiant Amusement Park, they had to pass through Radiant City. In the imagination of most people, since a city was called a city, it had to be a very large one. It had a highway system that extended in all directions, row upon row of skyscrapers, countless vehicles that sped through the city, and a densely packed population that was like ants. But when the true face of Radiant City entered Guhan's eyes, Guhan was still shocked. The entire city was built with red bricks, scattered all over the land without any pattern. Between the houses, there were only a few bumpy and damp muddy roads. If one was not careful, they might step on mud. Not to mention skyscrapers, there was not a single building that was more than 20 meters tall. This city looked more like a huge medieval village than a city. No wonder Guhan couldn't see the shadow of the city from afar. It turned out that the city was too short, so short that it could only be seen clearly from up close. With that, the magnificent modern amusement park in the middle of the Radiant City seemed especially out of place. Can you imagine the feeling of a modern Disney amusement park suddenly erected in the middle of an African mud tribe? Don't you think it's very incongruous? Beside Guhan, Jiyu Xuanwu smiled bitterly. Actually, before entering Yangjing City, I had always thought that the city would be like Radiant City. Only after seeing Yangjing City did I realize that a real city could be so magnificent. I had been a frog at the bottom of a well in the past. You guys have been living here for hundreds of years. Why are you able to build such a magnificent amusement park but not a proper city? Guhan asked curiously. Materials. Jiyu Xuanwu smiled even more bitterly. There is nothing in this dimensional rift apart from mud. There is no steel, no coal, not even a tree as thick as a fist. How do you expect us to build a proper city? Then why is your amusement park able to be built? This amusement park isn't one that we built here, but one that was moved in from the outside. Jiyu Xuanwu rubbed his head. I only know that it should have been moved from a Disney amusement park called Demon City. As for who moved in and how they moved in, I really don't know. None of them were willing to tell me the truth. Disney Amusement Park. Guhan had heard of this name before because there was also a Disney amusement park on the American continent where Los Angeles' base city was located. However, this Disney amusement park had been transformed by Yuan Ku's faction, the Martyr's Palace, into an extremely important stronghold in the human world. It had also become the greatest threat to Los Angeles' base city. Who would have thought that there was such a Disney amusement park in the former Demon City? Under Jiyu Xuanwu's lead, Guhan finally officially entered the boundaries of Radiant City. Due to his curiosity about this city, Duyu made a fuss about coming out to see this magical place. Thus, Guhan simply released all his sword ladies to follow behind him into this city. In the end, probably because the ground was too dirty and did not want to step on the mud, Duyu, who was the most noisy, climbed onto Guhan's body and was hugged by Guhan. Compared to Duyu, Yi Tian was probably the one who did not care about the ground the most. It seemed that in the medieval era when Yi Tian was active, the condition of the road was similar to these dirt roads. Therefore, Yi Tian did not care about it and allowed himself to step on the mud. Shui did not care about this radiant city at all. After a simple glance or two, she turned back into her sword form and returned to Guhan's scabbard. Chijian, on the other hand, obediently followed behind Jiyu Han, looking like a docile little wife. However, the humans in the Radiant City gave Guhan a huge shock because the entire city was terrifyingly silent. The group of people traversed through the Radiant City like pebbles falling into an abyss, not setting off even the slightest ripple. Apart from some young children who were sizing up Guhan's group with curious gazes, the rest, even the slightly older children, were completely indifferent to the appearance of Guhan's group. They sat lazily in front of their homes, staring blankly at the things around them. Only when their bodies felt stiff after sitting for a long time would they unwillingly change their posture and continue to lie there in a daze. In Guhan's eyes, these humans seemed to have lost the basic joy of being human. They were more like corpses that had lost their souls. Apart from the heaving of their chests to prove that they were still alive, they were no different from the dead. It felt like this entire city was not filled with humans but a bunch of dementia patients. Why is this happening? It was not that Chijian had never seen dementia before, but an entire city of hundreds of thousands of people had all become dementia. This was something Chijian had never seen before. I don't know either. They were born like this. When they were young, they were still lively, but as they grew older, they became stiffer and stiffer. I don't know why either. Looking at Gu Black Tortoise's expression, it seemed like she really didn't know why. Guhan could only put away the doubts in his heart and began to silently move towards the Radiant amusement park. It seemed like the answers to all his questions could only be found in this amusement park. According to Gu Black Tortoise, the Radiant City was a city with a population of 300,000. In a situation where there were no skyscrapers and only simple houses, the area of the city was actually not small. Guhan walked for a full 30 minutes before he reached the core area of the Radiant City, which was the entrance of the Radiant Amusement Park. The Radiant Amusement Park was surrounded by a 3-meter-tall wall, with only 2 entrances at the entrance. One of the entrances had a sign for employees, so there was not a single person queuing up. On the other side, the entrance for tourists was a completely different scene. Countless humans wearing simple linen clothes were queuing up here. These humans lined up in a straight line. There was no supervisor in the middle of the line to maintain order, but these humans automatically lined up together. There was no sign of anyone cutting the line. Putting aside their stiff facial expressions, these humans could be considered to be of high quality. Look, look. Miss Black Tortoise is back. Dimmu, look, look. Miss Black Tortoise is back. 2 maids with red and blue hair wearing maid attire at the staff entrance saw Gu Black Tortoise and immediately hugged each other in surprise. However, these 2 maids looked a little familiar to Guhan. Right, aren't they similar to the 2 cute dolls in my guardian's mansion, and Dimmu? Right, they are also called and Dimmu. Could it be that these 2 maids are the original bodies of the cute dolls? Guhan remembered that these 2 sisters were replicated by later generations according to the information excavated from the ruins, so no one should have seen the original bodies of these 2 sisters. Who would have thought that these 2 sisters would actually appear here? Thinking of this, Guhan suddenly felt a little ashamed. If these 2 sisters knew that their image had been made into thousands of cute dolls by humans and then used as sex tools, they would probably hug each other and cry bitterly. At the same time, Guhan was also somewhat glad that when Gu Black Tortoise came to find him, the pair of cute dolls in his guardian's mansion were not in the hall, so Gu Black Tortoise did not know that there was such a pair of cute dolls in his guardian's mansion. Dimmu. I missed you too so much. Gu Black Tortoise also excitedly walked up to the 2 sisters and hugged them. After the 3 of them chatted for a while, Gu Black Tortoise asked anxiously, Dimmu. How is my mother? Is her body better now? This. and Dimmu awkwardly lowered their heads and did not say a word. Looking at the expression of the 2 sisters, Gu Black Tortoise also knew that his mother's condition must be very bad. Even if she is not dead, she is not far from death. Dimmu, I will chat with you later. I will take him to see my mother first. Gu Black Tortoise immediately rushed back to Guhan's side and grabbed Guhan's wrist. He was about to pull Guhan through the staff entrance into Guang Guang Amusement Park. Miss, you can't. Miss, you can't take him in. At this time, and Dimmu suddenly used their bodies to block in front of Gu Black Tortoise, not letting him enter. To be precise, not letting Guhan, who was behind Gu Black Tortoise, enter. Chapter 898. Miss Black Tortoise, have you forgotten the rules of our amusement park? Only employees of the amusement park can enter from the staff passage. Ordinary humans are not allowed to enter from here. Said in an unquestionable tone. Miss Black Tortoise, please don't let this disgusting man enter from here. Electric Moo looked at Guhan with a disgusting expression. This made Guhan doubt his appearance a little. Was he really that disgusting? Miss Black Tortoise, if you must let him in, let him go through the normal entrance. Judging from the current queuing speed, he will be able to queue up to enter our amusement park in about 3 days and 27 hours, sincerely suggested. But what the hell was this 3 days and 27 hours? Were there 27 hours in a day? No. I don't care about the rules. I will take him in today. Gu Black Tortoise pushed and Electric Moo's shoulders and was about to forcefully pull Guhan in through the staff passage. Sister. The 4 palms of and the Electric sisters leaned against each other, and an invisible barrier instantly blocked in front of the Gu Black Tortoise. The Gu Black Tortoise's push not only failed to push Ohm and the Electric Sisters away, but was instead bounced off by the barrier. If Guhan hadn't caught Gu Black Tortoise in time, Gu Black Tortoise would have already flown a few hundred meters away. How dare the two of you? How dare you use the maple leaf wall to stop me? Gu Black Tortoise's face was red with anger, but there was nothing it could do in the face of the maple leaf wall that Ohm and Electric Moo had used. What is this maple leaf wall? Guhan asked. The entire Radiance amusement park is powered by the power of the Red Maple Kingdom. As long as you hold a position in the Radiance amusement park, you can borrow the power of the Red Maple Kingdom. Now that the two sisters are in charge of the amusement park, they can naturally borrow the power of the Red Maple Kingdom to form the Maple Leaf Wall. Unless my power can surpass the power of the entire Red Maple Kingdom, I won't be able to break this wall, Gu Black Tortoise explained. Obviously, she was not convinced that she had lost to the power of the Red Maple Kingdom. How strong is the Red Maple Kingdom? Does it have the power of an immortal sword wielder? Guhan asked again. There should be. Jiyu Xuanwu rubbed his head. I've never seen anyone break through the Maple Kingdom's blockade anyway. The power of an immortal sword. Guhan whispered something into Qi Dian's ear. Qi Dian nodded and took the initiative to transform into a sword, which Guhan held in his hand. Guhan eagerly looked at the wall of maple leaves erected in front of Ohm and the Electric Sisters. On the other hand, Jiyu Han was very interested to see if he could break through this wall with his own strength. Ohm. Could it be that this human wants to overestimate himself and challenge the power of the wall of maple leaves? Electro said as if he was looking at an idiot. Electrician. Let's let him overestimate himself and challenge the power of the maple leaf wall, Ohm said confidently. Sorry to offend you. Guhan walked in front of the wall of maple leaves and slashed at the wall without thinking. To be honest, Guhan didn't use much strength in this slash. He didn't even pour the power of the stars into the sword lady's body. He just used pure physical strength to slash at the wall. Guhan's slash was only to test the strength of the wall of maple leaves. He wanted to first test the strength of the wall and find out where the weakness of the wall of maple leaves was. However, he never expected that when Guhan stabbed down, the wall of maple leaves didn't seem to exist, allowing the Qi Dian sword to pass through without any hindrance. It wasn't until the tip of the sword pierced Ohm's throat that Guhan reacted and hurriedly stopped the blade. Otherwise, Ohm's throat might have been pierced by Guhan. This scene was obviously not what Ohm and Electro had expected. When Guhan withdrew the Qi Dian sword, Ohm's body couldn't help but shiver. Only then did he realize that he was only one step away from death. Ohm, are you all right? You're not hurt, are you? Electro hurriedly hugged his sister and kept shaking her, causing Ohm's slightly heavier opium pie to ripple with a charming ripple. What the hell? Did you remove the wall of maple leaves? Jiyu Xuanwu hurriedly walked over and reached out to touch Ohm, who was in the arms of Electro. However, halfway through, his hand was blocked by an invisible wall. Strange. Isn't the wall of maple leaves still here? Only then did Jiyu Xuanwu realize that the wall of maple leaves still existed and hadn't been turned off by Ohm and the Electro sisters. Electro. Stop shaking me. If you shake me again, I'll really faint. Electro struggled to stand up, then stretched out his hand and touched the wall of maple leaves. After confirming that the wall of maple leaves really existed, his expression was completely confused. Ohm. Touch me and see if I'm sleeping, Electro said. In the face of his sister's request, Ohm readily agreed. Then, he directly reached into Electro's maid skirt. The moment the skirt was lifted, Guhan could even see the amazing dark purple lace inside the skirt. Ah! Electro let out a delicate gasp that made one's entire body feel as if it had been electrocuted. With a little blush on her cheeks, she said, "It seems that Electro isn't asleep, but why? Why did the wall of maple leaves suddenly fail? Is the power of the Maple Kingdom in a period of weakness?" Without saying a word, Jiyu Xuanwu pulled out his magic bullet gun and aimed it at the wall of maple leaves. "Let me try." Bang! The muzzle of the magic bullet gun emitted a flame, and then a ripple could be seen on the surface of the wall of maple leaves. Then, Jiyu Xuanwu let out a blood-curdling scream, and her entire body fell to the ground like a martyr, with a dragon-toothed bullet stuck in her forehead. But don't worry, this dragon-tooth bullet was after all Jiyu Xuanwu's own bullet, so it was impossible for it to hurt Jiyu Xuanwu. Jiyu Xuanwu quickly pulled out the dragon-tooth bullet and awkwardly stuffed it back into his pocket. She could be considered the first person in history to be hit by her own dragon-tooth bullet. But from this point, it could be said that the power of the wall of maple leaves was still not bad. After all, the power of the dragon-tooth bullet was equivalent to the full strength of a famed sword wielder. This wall of maple leaves was able to silently reflect the dragon-tooth bullet, which was enough to show how powerful it was. That's strange. The power of the wall of maple leaves didn't change. Jiyu Xuanwu, and Electro were all confused. On the other hand, Guhan seemed to understand something. Jiyu Xuanwu, has this wall of maple leaves been attacked by a sword maiden before? Guhan asked Jiyu Xuanwu. I don't know. Jiyu Xuanwu shrugged at first, but immediately reacted. You mean, the power of the wall of maple leaves doesn't work on sword maidens? That's impossible. Immediately refuted. Although sword maidens have never been here, the general manager said that the power of the Maple Kingdom can fight against all the powers in this world, except for the director. There are no exceptions. That's easy. Let's test it again. Guhan raised the Chijian sword in his hand again and lightly poked at the wall of maple leaves. Just like before, the wall of maple leaves seemed to have disappeared, and it did not block the Chijian sword at all, allowing it to pass through. This scene made the Ohm sisters' red and blue eyes almost pop out of their sockets. Electro even muttered to himself, could it be that the power of a sword maiden can really ignore the power of the Maple Kingdom? I want to try it too. Duyu, who had been watching from the side, immediately felt an itch in her heart. After all, she was still a naughty child, and she had no resistance to interesting things. Naturally, she wanted to try it herself. So, Duyu held the hilt of her Duyu sword with both hands and used all her strength to poke at the wall of maple leaves. Aya, F***CK. The tip of Duyu's sword hit the wall of maple leaves, and it instantly bent due to Duyu's strength. Then, the wall of maple leaves trembled like a heart, and Duyu's sword instantly straightened. Duyu's body flew into the air like a stone shot from a slingshot. After drawing a beautiful curve in the air, she fell heavily to the ground. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Duyu rubbed her little butt and staggered back, glaring at Guhan with eyes full of grievance. She kept hammering Guhan's waist with both hands, and said angrily, Big brother, you're lying. This wall can't be pierced at all, you big liar. Guhan let Duyu massage his back as he fell into deep thought. Duyu was also a sword maiden, so why couldn't Duyu poke through the wall of maple leaves? Juzi, try it. Guhan turned around and said to Juzi, who had been following behind him. Yes, master. Juzi did not hesitate to pull out her Juzi sword and was ready to slash at the wall. Be careful, don't use too much strength. This wall seems to reflect your strength. Jiyu Han added from behind Juzi, and Juzi immediately followed his advice. She reduced the strength that was threatening to devour Huo Yuhao to the point where it felt like an itch. Juzi's sword's fate was no different from Duyu's. She was still blocked by the wall of maple leaves, but she did not fly out like Duyu. Next, Yi Tian also tried it out, but the wall of maple leaves worked just as well, and blocked them outside. Could it be that Chijian's sword is the only exception? Jiyu Xuanwu stared at Chijian's sword in Guhan's hand curiously. Could it be that only Chijian's sword can ignore the power of the wall of maple leaves? Not necessarily. Guhan shook his head and let go of Chijian's sword. Chijian's sword automatically returned to its original form. Chijian, try and see if you can pierce through this wall. Guhan said to Chijian. To everyone's surprise, when Chijian's sword attacked the wall of maple leaves in the form of a sword maiden, it was still blocked by the wall of maple leaves, just like the other sword maidens. It was as if the sword maiden that could ignore the wall of maple leaves was not Chijian's sword. Chapter 899. Finally, Guhan returned the Chijian's sword to its sheath and held it in his hand. Once again, The Chidyen sword successfully passed through the maple leaf wall. Next, Guhan experimented with Juzi and the other sword maidens. The result was the same as the Chidyen sword. As long as the sword maiden was held in Guhan's hand, he could successfully pass through the maple leaf wall. Otherwise, he could not. In the end, Guhan simply used his own hand as an experiment. He found that his hand could also ignore the existence of the maple leaf wall and pass through it at will. It was very obvious that the one who could really ignore the maple leaf wall was not the sword maiden, but Guhan himself. It was Guhan himself who could pass through the maple leaf wall. This result made Ohm and Electric tremble with fear. They could not accept it because the power of the maple leaf wall was born from the power of the entire Red Maple Kingdom. If Guhan could ignore the power of the maple leaf wall, didn't that mean that Guhan could ignore the power of the entire Red Maple Kingdom? Didn't that mean that the power that the entire Radiance Amusement Park was most proud of would completely lose its effect on Guhan, and the Radiance Amusement Park would also lose its biggest trump card? Ohm and Electric Moo had completely lost their wits. They even forgot to maintain the maple leaf wall. The wall shook a few times before disappearing on its own. Good chance. Jiyu Xuanwu's eyes lit up when he saw the maple leaf wall disappear. He immediately grabbed Guhan's hand and ran. While Ohm and Electric were in a daze, he directly rushed into the Radiance Amusement Park. By the time the two sisters reacted, the two people had already entered the depths of the amusement park. It was likely that they would not be able to catch up. It was worth mentioning that although the staff passage was very noisy, the ordinary visitor passage was unusually calm. Those expressionless humans had no interest in what was happening in the staff passage. They just stared at the back of the head of the person in front of them like zombies. Little by little, they slowly passed through the entrance of the amusement park and entered the world of the amusement park. After entering the amusement park, Guhan began to carefully observe the entire amusement park. He found that the attractions in the amusement park were very dense. There was a new attraction every few dozen meters, and there were many tourists waiting in front of each attraction. To Ji Yuhan's surprise, unlike the zombie-like faces of the humans outside the amusement park, some of the humans inside the amusement park had regained their human appearance. They had smiles on their faces, and their words and actions were more natural. They even took the initiative to greet others. Especially when they saw Ji Yuhan and his sword lady, they were so shocked that they covered their mouths in shock. They were shocked because of the clothes that Ji Yuhan and the others were wearing. Compared to the simple linen clothes that the humans were wearing, Ji Yuhan's casual clothes that were not worth much looked like the clothes that only an emperor could wear. Seeing such a human, Guhan felt slightly relieved. Because only such a human could be called a living human, and the humans waiting in line at the entrance were at most walking corpses. Guhan also noticed that in fact, there were also many walking corpses in the amusement park. For example, the humans who were waiting in line at the entrance of the amusement park were still standing there without any extra movements, just like the humans who entered the amusement park. At this time, a ride called Happy Bumper Car had just ended. From the exit of the amusement park, a group of humans walked out with rich expressions. At the entrance of the amusement park, the humans who looked like walking corpses were lining up in an orderly manner to enter the amusement park. I see. These amusement parks seem to be able to restore human nature. After playing in them once, they can regain some of their human emotions. But why is that? Why did the people here become like this? Although Guhan wanted to carefully investigate what the humans here had experienced, Jiyu Xianwu couldn't help but drag Guhan all the way. Guhan didn't have the time to ask these humans who had recovered their vitality. He could only let Jiyu Xianwu drag him to the center of the amusement park. Finally, they arrived at the entrance of a gorgeous medieval castle. This gorgeous medieval castle was located in the heart of Radiance Amusement Park. The castle's gate was written with the words Red Maple Kingdom. Combined with the fact that Ohm and Electric had mentioned that the power of the Wall of Maple Leaves originated from the Red Maple Kingdom, Guhan was almost certain that this castle was the core power of the entire Radiance Amusement Park. The power of the entire Radiance Amusement Park probably came from this castle. Ayo! Isn't this our Miss Black Tortoise? Why, did you finally remember your pitiful mother? At the gate of the Red Maple Kingdom, A young girl wearing a red and black Gothic dress walked out. Her long black hair was tied into 2 braids that fell to her shoulders. Her slender limbs made people feel as if they would break with a little force. Her waterfall-like bangs covered the left half of her astonishingly beautiful face. On the other side of her face was a right eye that was as deep as a black hole, and her lips that were as tender as cherry blossoms. Such beauty was filled with a devilish charm that could capture a man with just a glance. Her skin was as white and smooth as pearls. Aunt Kwong-san. Ji Xianwu, who had always been willful, shrank to the side like a quail when he saw Aunt Kwong-san. Looking at her timid appearance, it was hard to believe that this was the same Ji Xianwu from Guhan's memory. I said it before. If you dare to call me aunt again, I will personally kill your future. Aunt Kwong-san's voice was not loud, and there was not much of a fierce aura, but it scared Ji Xianwu so much that he hid behind Guhan. Even if he couldn't see Ji Xianwu's appearance behind him, Guhan could feel through the air that Ji Xianwu's body was trembling. Is this the father you found? Aunt Kwong-san turned her attention to Guhan, and looked at Guhan with a gaze that was filled with meat. Yes, a gaze that was filled with meat. Guhan felt that in this young girl's eyes, he was like a piece of fat meat. Here. Kwong-san suddenly laughed. You're very good. Do you want to come to my room tonight to play? I have a lot of fun ways. After saying that, Kwong-san put her finger into her mouth, and her nimble little tongue slightly touched the tip of her finger. The finger that was stained with a little bit of sparkling and translucent water droplets stretched towards Guhan's lips. Guhan was not interested in exchanging saliva with Kwong-san. His body leaned to the left, and easily avoided Kwong-san's finger. Hateful. A man who doesn't know how to be funny. Seeing that her attack had missed, Kwong-san was stunned for a moment, and then restored her charming smile, and twisted her perfect body to leave. I didn't expect to meet Aunt Kwong-san. It really scared me to death. Seeing that Kwong-san had left, Ji Xianwu immediately jumped out from behind Guhan as if he had been granted amnesty. With just a few moves, Ji Xianwu's forehead actually had a lot of sweat. Why are you so afraid of her? Guhan asked, puzzled. She is the deputy general manager of the amusement park, and the famous big devil in the amusement park. I'm still okay. Some guys in the amusement park would be scared to the point of peeing their pants when they see her. I'm different, except for the first time when I saw her pee her pants when I was a child. I never peed my pants again, Ji Xianwu said proudly. So you also peed your pants before? Guhan smiled, and took the lead to walk into the Red Maple Kingdom. Pa. Ji Xianwu slapped his own face, and muttered, what the hell, why did I tell him this? Although from the outside, one could tell that the castle of the Red Maple Kingdom was very big. However, walking into the castle, one could still feel a sense of shock. The first floor of the castle was actually a hall without any rooms. There wasn't even a load-bearing pillar. From an architectural point of view, it was impossible to rely on the outside wall of the building to support the weight of a castle. Of course, this was a world full of unscientific power, so having an unscientific castle was not a big deal. I'm finally back. Ji Xianwu followed closely into the castle. Ever since she was young, this was the first time she had left home for such a long time, and it was natural for her to have some feelings of homecoming. Follow me. Under Ji Xianwu's lead, they quietly walked to the center of the hall on the first floor of the castle. Then, Ji Xianwu squatted down, and drew a special symbol on the ground. The ground under Guhan's feet began to shake, and then it began to rise like a stage lift. On the other hand, a hole that matched the lift opened on the ceiling of the first floor. So this castle used such a special method to reach the second floor. No wonder Guhan didn't see any stairs or elevators on the first floor. After entering the second floor, the castle returned to its normal style, and there were many doors on both sides of the long corridor. However, these doors didn't have any annotations like laundry room, general manager's office, or master bedroom, so Guhan didn't know what these rooms were used for. He could only follow Ji Xianwu's footsteps, and finally stopped in front of an ordinary door that was no different from the other doors. Standing at the door, Ji Xianwu took a deep breath, and after hesitating for a long time, he finally knocked on the door. With a squeak, the door opened automatically. Chapter 900. It was hard to believe that the girl in front of Guhan was Jiyu Xuanwu's mother. Although her skin was visibly pale and her body was extremely thin, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Jiyu Xuanwu's mother was no more than 20 years old. Of course, there was nothing strange about it. After all, Yuan Ku was immortal in this world. As long as he came to this world, he would stop aging. It was natural for him to be able to maintain his 20 years of age for a few hundred years. But Guhan could swear to God that he had never seen Jiyu Xuanwu's mother. Although the girl's beauty was not inferior to any sword maidens that Guhan had seen, Guhan really had no relationship with this girl. To be honest, Guhan was very disappointed when he saw the girl's appearance. Because there were many clues that pointed to this girl living in the Radiant amusement park was very likely to be the woman that he dreamed about in the dungeon. But the moment Guhan saw Jiyu Xuanwu's mother, he could very clearly confirm that this woman was definitely not Artoria. Mom. Mom. Are you okay? On the other side, Jiyu Xuanwu had already thrown himself into his mother's arms and began to cry uncontrollably. A cute girl hugging her sickly mother and crying together. No matter how one looked at it, it was a touching scene. However, Ji Han felt that there were many secrets hidden in this scene. The entire Guanghui amusement park was full of mysteries, but Jiyu Xuanwu was the only one who was completely innocent. Good girl. Where have you been these days? You made Mom worried to death. Jiyu Xuanwu's mother, the woman named Chidu Isuzu, gently stroked her daughter's long hair and asked, Mom. I went to find Dad. Jiyu Xuanwu's face was full of tears and snot. I know that Mom actually misses Dad very much, so I left without permission and went to the human city to find Dad. Silly girl. The human city is so dangerous, and your identity is so special. If someone found out, what would you do to Mom? Cough cough cough. Chidu Isuzu hugged her daughter and said, It's okay. I was lucky, I met Dad on the way, and Dad protected me. I was very safe in the human city, and I also saw a lot of things that I have never seen before. When Mom recovers, I will let Dad bring Mom to play in the human city. This time, Jiyu Xuanwu was able to call out father very smoothly, unlike before when he would only occasionally say the word father out. Is that so? You found that bastard? Chidu Isuzu's hand that was hugging Jiyu Xuanwu's back tightened for a moment before loosening. Yeah. Mom. Father is right here. Turn around and take a look. Jiyu Xuanwu climbed up from Thousand Do 50 Bell's body, then shifted his body, allowing Jiyu Han and Thousand Do 50 Bell to see each other without any obstruction. Silence. The entire atmosphere was silent, and it was a silence that lasted for a very long time. Jiyu Han was silent because she didn't know what to say. After all, she had no impression of this girl named Chidu Isuzu. Anything she said would be awkward. But Chidu Isuzu was different. Guhan never knew that a person's eyes could reveal so many emotions. But Chidu Isuzu was different. Guhan never knew that a person's eyes could reveal so many emotions. Chidu Isuzu's eyes first revealed a shocked expression, and then her eyes instantly became sad, and at the same time filled with crystal tears. After a short period of sadness, Chidu Isuzu's eyes suddenly became angry and sharp. She struggled to get up from the bed, but she couldn't support her body. At this time, Chidu Isuzu's eyes became desperate again, so desperate that even her pupils began to dilate. But when her pupils dilated to the extreme, a little light suddenly shone in the center of her pupils, and finally turned into a deep hope and shyness. Well, the description just now only described about 1/10 of Chidu Isuzu's eyes. There were more details in these eyes that were difficult to describe with words. In short, after seeing Chidu Isuzu's eyes, even Guhan couldn't help but have a little doubt. Could it be that he really had a relationship with this woman before? This touching reunion lasted for about 20 minutes. Finally, Chidu Isuzu's eyes calmed down, and she opened her mouth and said in a hoarse voice, Are you hungry? I'll cook for you. Look. What warm and touching words. It was as if hundreds of years of sorrow, resentment, love, and hatred were all condensed into these words. Hearing this sentence, Guhan couldn't help but tremble, let alone Jiyu Xuanwu. Hearing his mother's words, Jiyu Xuanwu finally confirmed that Guhan was indeed his father. His mother and Guhan did have a touching love story. Mom. Woo. Black Tortoise finally has a father. Black Tortoise is finally not a child without a father. Jiyu Xuanwu once again fell into Chidu Isuzu's arms, and his wet little face rubbed against Chidu Isuzu's plump and perky European pie. Okay. It's all in the past. These things are not something you, a child, should worry about. Chidu Isuzu patted Jiyu Xuanwu's back, and said to Jiyu Xuanwu with a voice full of emotion, "Child, can you go out for a while? Mom has something to say to him." Jiyu Xuanwu nodded vigorously, and then climbed up from Chidu Isuzu's body, and prepared to leave the room. But when leaving the room, Jiyu Xuanwu whispered in Guhan's ear, "Don't make my mother angry, or I won't let you go. Sit." Chidu Isuzu waved her hand, and a rather luxurious goose feather chair appeared under Guhan's buttocks. Guhan didn't stand on ceremony, and directly sat down. "I didn't think you still have the face to come back to see me." Chidu Isuzu's pair of beautiful eyes firmly stared at Guhan. "Although I already knew that we would meet again one day, I didn't think it would be at this time. First of all, I have to admit, Miss Isuzu, your acting skills are very superb. I almost believe that I had a past with you that no one knows." Guhan shrugged his shoulders. "But don't you think your performance is a little too much? It feels like those old monsters who have studied in the performance school for decades." "Is that so? After so many years, you still don't want to admit that I'm your woman?" Chidu Isuzu's eyes instantly became incomparably sad, and the thousands of soft hearts in it made people's hearts ache. "No need to say more." Guhan smiled, and then took out a long hair from his hand. "This is the hair that I just plucked from Black Tortoise's head." After saying that, Guhan took out a set of testing equipment from his dimensional pocket, which was half the height of a person, and was equipped with a computer. "This is the most accurate DNA testing equipment that we humans have developed. If Black Tortoise is really your daughter, why don't you take out a hair and send it to me? I'll test it and know." "Don't worry, this equipment is very advanced, and only needs 5 minutes to know the result. I specially bought this from the Shanghai Pass Sword Bearer shop." This was indeed bought by Guhan from the Shanghai Pass Sword Bearer shop at the last minute. Ever since he met Jiyu Xuanwu, Guhan had been looking for an opportunity to confirm whether Jiyu Xuanwu was really his daughter. In the end, when he accepted Yaoguang's mission the day before yesterday, and was about to buy some preparation materials from the Shanghai Pass Sword Bearer shop, he was surprised to find such a set of equipment for sale. Although Guhan could not understand why the Shanghai Pass Sword Bearer shop would have such a set of equipment for sale for a long time, Guhan did not hesitate to buy it. After all, it was not expensive, and it was only a mere 200,000 RMB. It was not until a long time later that Guhan happened to see the answer to this question in a gossip magazine. It was in the early days of the customs establishment, and many sword bearers found out that they were already fathers when they returned home. Therefore, this equipment became a must for some sword bearers when they returned home, so that they could immediately know whether their child was of their bloodline or not. Chidu Isuzu's face froze for a moment. "What kind of joke are you talking about? Black Tortoise is a mixed blood of Yuan Ku and a human. How can this kind of human equipment detect the relationship between me and Black Tortoise? You don't know this, but it's not like there haven't been any mixed blood children with Yuan Ku in the previous world. They have all been tested with the same equipment, and it can indeed detect the genetic connection. I have a related proof paper with hundreds of thousands of words here. I wonder if you're interested in taking a look." Guhan said step by step. "Since you suspect that Black Tortoise is not your child, why don't you use your blood and Black Tortoise's hair to verify whether Black Tortoise is your child? Why do you need me, the mother, to verify it?" Chidu Isuzu said. "How do you know that I haven't done the verification?" Guhan suddenly let out a long sigh. "If I didn't confirm that she is my daughter, I wouldn't even appear in front of you. Isn't this enough? After so many years, don't you think that you haven't hurt us enough?" Chidu Isuzu's voice suddenly became mournful. "I may have hurt Black Tortoise and her daughter, but who her mother is still unknown." Guhan pushed the machine directly to Chidu Isuzu's side. "Just say it. I suspect that you are not Black Tortoise's mother, so I need you to verify it. Of course, if you're not willing, it doesn't matter. I will directly admit that you are not Black Tortoise's mother. Chapter 901. Forget it. You win. I didn't expect to deceive you in the first place. Chidu Isuzu's entire body softened. But as long as you believe that Black Tortoise is your child, that's enough. Who is Black Tortoise's real mother? With a wave of his hand, Guhan put the machine in front of him back into his dimensional pocket. Although Guhan had already confirmed that Jiyu Xuanwu was his daughter, and Chidu Isuzu also admitted that she was not Jiyu Xuanwu's mother, there was a bigger problem in front of Guhan. That was, who was Jiyu Xuanwu's real mother? I think you've already guessed it, right? After all, you came in from the entrance of the Norland Plains. Since you can unlock the opening rune there, you should have vaguely guessed who Black Tortoise's mother is. Chidu Isuzu looked at Guhan with a playful expression. How is this possible? How could it be her? Guhan murmured. Since when did His Majesty Guhan doubt his own conclusions? Haven't you always been extremely confident? Chidu Isuzu sneered. It's just as you guessed. Black Tortoise is the child of you and director Artoria. In a simple and unpretentious manner, Chendo 52 Bells had revealed the truth of the matter. In fact, Guhan had already begun to guess that Jiyu Xuanwu's mother was Artoria. The reason was simple. This was purely based on appearance. Jiyu Xuanwu's face had the characteristics of both Guhan and Artoria. At first glance, Guhan felt that Jiyu Xuanwu was very similar to Artoria. Otherwise, why did you think Guhan only saw the scene of Jiyu Xuanwu and the angel fighting? The angel also made it very clear that as long as Guhan did not intervene in the battlefield, the angel would not attack Guhan. In addition, humans and angels were wary of each other. There was no reason for Guhan to risk destroying the relationship between humans and angels to save Yuan Ku's life. Where is Artoria? I have something to ask her. Guhan took a deep breath and said. Questions popped up one after another. After solving the question of who Jiyu Xuanwu's mother was, a new question popped up. When exactly did he have a relationship with Artoria? In any case, it was absolutely impossible for the relationship to have occurred in the 18 years of Guhan's life. What was even more ridiculous was that the relationship between Guhan and Artoria only existed in the game's dungeon. They had never even met in real life. To Artoria, Guhan was just a stranger. How could Guhan and Artoria have a daughter like Jiyu Xuanwu? Could it be that Artoria was the one who took the first kill a few months ago? Guhan couldn't help but think of the unsolved case that happened in Fort Yuyang. Until now, Guhan still hadn't figured out who had killed him in real life. Are you sure you really want to know the answer to this question? Thousand Do Isuzu smiled slightly. Have you forgotten that someone once told you to never have any ideas about Miss Artoria before you become a sword wielder of the immortal sword tier? Don't even try to find out anything related to her. You know Yi Qing. Guhan's eyes narrowed into slits. He didn't expect Thousand Do Isuzu to not only know about the past between him and Artoria, but also Yi Qing. He even knew what Yi Qing had said to him in the game dungeon. Who was this Thousand Do Isuzu? What was his relationship with himself, Artoria, and Yi Qing? Not only do we know each other, but we are also very good friends. At this point, Thousand Do Isuzu revealed a lingering look. I know you must have a lot of questions to ask me, but in order to not destroy this world, the answers to these questions have to be experienced by you yourself. I can't answer you. Guhan was slightly disappointed. He thought that since Thousand Do Isuzu told him so readily that Jiyu Xuanwu's mother was Artoria, then it was very likely that she would also tell him other secrets. He didn't expect that in the end, the truth was still hidden in the deep fog. Can you answer me this question? Will I return to the past in the near future? Did a lot of things happen in Yi Qing's era? This was the answer that Guhan could think of that was closest to the truth. Only by going back to the past could he explain many unexplainable things. You will know the truth sooner or later. You just need to be patient, it won't be too long, Thousand Do Isuzu said. Are you really sick or pretending to be sick? Jiyu Han originally thought that Thousand Do Isuzu was just pretending to be sick, but when he exposed Thousand Do Isuzu's true identity, he found that Thousand Doisuzu was still lying weakly on the bed, as if he really didn't have long to live. Does it matter if I'm really sick or pretending to be sick? Thousand Doisuzu shook her head with difficulty. I'm not sick, but I'm really dying. Is there a way to save you? Guhan said solemnly. It was you who raised Black Toria, allowing her to grow up on the basis of maternal love. This is what I need to thank you for. If I can do it, you must tell me. I will do my best to save you. Thank you so much. Thousand Doisuzu's face showed a strange expression. It was hard to tell whether she was happy or sad. I said I'm not sick, I'm just dying. People will grow old and die eventually, even the powerful Jendi is no exception, right? But you are not a person, you are Yuan Ku, and Yuan Ku will not die by himself. Guhan replied dryly. You really don't know how to talk. Thousand Doisuzu forced a smile. I don't have much time left, but before I die, I have a request. I hope that His Majesty Guhan can promise me. Say it. Before you know the truth, please don't tell Black Toria that I am not her mother. I don't want her to bear new grief when I die, Thousand Doisuzu begged. I promise you. Guhan nodded. Actually, this is also my original plan. If Black Toria asks me who Artoria is and where she is, and I can't answer her questions, I think I will be very unhappy. Then I can only trouble His Majesty Guhan to accompany me for a few more days. Thousand Doisuzu stretched out her pale white hand to Guhan. Husband, is that okay? Looking at Thousand Doisuzu's hand, Guhan hesitated and did not move. Thousand Doisuzu had already made it very clear that this was just an act for Gu Black Toria. But Guhan faintly felt that if he really held that hand, he was afraid that he would have to bear more things. Mom. Dad. I cooked the noodles. Can I bring it in? At this moment, the door of the room was knocked again. The one who spoke was Gu Black Toria. This guy actually took advantage of the time when Guhan and Thousand Doisuzu were chatting to cook the noodles. It could be seen that Gu Black Toria sincerely hoped that Guhan and Thousand Doisuzu could reconcile, so that she could have a complete father and mother. It could be imagined that if Gu Black Toria knew that Thousand Doisuzu was actually not her mother, and that she did not even know where her real mother was, her whole person might fall into a state of collapse. Therefore, Gu Han's body immediately leaned forward, and grabbed Chen Doisuzu's outstretched hand. At this moment, the door was also opened, and Gu Black Toria, who was carrying a large pot of steaming noodles, was surprised to see his father holding his mother's hand. Hot tears immediately flowed out of his eyes and dripped into the bowl of noodles. Mom, this is the noodles that your daughter personally cooked, at least have a bite. Gu Black Toria, with a face full of smiles and tears, walked to Thousand Doisuzu's side with the noodles. You bastard, hurry up and let go of your stinky hand, what are you doing holding it for? Thousand Doisuzu also had hot tears in her eyes as she pushed Guhan's hand away, and then took the hot noodles that Gu Black Toria brought over. She did not care about the temperature at all, and gulped it down in big mouthfuls. She did not look like a dying patient at all. However, Gu Han could tell from Chen Doisuzu's trembling little finger that it was as if he had Parkinson's disease. Chen Doisuzu must have forcefully endured the pain to make such a healthy state, in order to make Gu Xuanwu feel at ease. You mother and daughter can chat. I'm going out for a walk. After saying that, Guhan directly got up and prepared to leave. Dad, can you leave after eating the noodles? This is the noodles that your daughter personally cooked. Gu Black Toria grabbed onto Guhan's clothes and said with a face full of expectation. Just one bowl. Guhan sighed. Gu Black Toria brought 3 bowls over, and it was obvious that he had already counted Guhan's portion. As he ate the bowl of steaming hot noodles, Guhan's heart was extremely complicated. A few months ago, he was only a child who was not even 18 years old. But now, he actually had a daughter, and it was a daughter who was the same age as him. But this daughter was also his own, and this was a responsibility that he could not escape from. If it was just a biological daughter, it would be fine. But Gu Black Toria had connections with Thousand Doisuzu, Artoria, and even Yi Qing. Coupled with the fact that he had heard from Fleeting Maple about the end of the human race, all of these things were like a huge quilt pressing down on Guhan's body, causing Guhan to feel a faint feeling of suffocation. Ah, Gu Black Toria's noodles are quite delicious. Guhan ate the entire bowl of noodles in one go. Chapter 902. Guhan was arranged to stay in a room on the third floor of the Maple Kingdom, while Jiyu Xuanwu was whispering to his mother in the 1050 bells room. It was rare for Guhan to have some peace and quiet to rest for a while. In order to search for Ashima, Guhan had not slept for 2 days. Guhan, who was physically and mentally exhausted, slept until he woke up naturally. Only then did he realize that it was pitch black outside the window. Only the Radiance Amusement Park's Ferris wheel was still emitting a colorful light. Perhaps now was the best time to understand this amusement park. With this thought in mind, Guhan got up and left the room. He glanced at Ashima, who was in the medical bay, and saw that she was still in a deep state of treatment. He felt slightly strange. This was a medical bay of the sword and fairy grade. Even if she was injured to the point where only her head was left, it would not take more than 12 hours for her to fully recover. Although Ashima had been in the medical bay for 10 hours, there was still some distance from 12 hours. However, Ashima only had some blood loss injuries. In theory, she would only need half an hour to fully recover. Could it be that Ashima still had some hidden injuries? Guhan shook his head. He looked at his sword lady, and saw that the two cute lollis were still in a sweet dream. Chijian was also sleeping soundly on the chair. Yi Tian was nowhere to be seen, and Shishui had not even come out of her scabbard. Only Juzi followed closely behind Guhan the moment he woke up, looking like a loyal and reliable maid. Let's go out for a walk. Guhan placed his hand on Juzi's sword hilt, and Juzi instantly transformed into her sword form. Guhan used Juzi's strengthened body to directly jump out of the window, and landed steadily on the ground. This was indeed the fastest way to leave the Maple Kingdom's castle. In the middle of the night, most of the attractions in Guanghui Amusement Park would not be open to the public. The crowds of people had also disappeared without a trace. Only the lights on the Ferris wheel faintly illuminated this strange world. At the same time, Guhan also sensed Yi Tian's location. She was strolling in a lush forest in the northeast of the amusement park. Guhan guessed that she was currently in a drunken state, and did not bother to care about her anymore. Guhan walked around the amusement park's established route, and found that there was really no one in the amusement park. Both humans and Yuan Ku who worked there were nowhere to be seen. Guhan had clearly seen many Yuan Ku walking around the amusement park during the day, but he did not expect that they would all disappear at night. Ji Yu Han decided to return to the Maple Kingdom's castle after feeling like he couldn't find any more clues. On his way back, Ji Yu Han could vaguely hear the sound of someone crying. The sound seemed to be coming from the trash can. Guhan turned his attention to the trash can that was placed next to a bench. It was a normal trash can, and it was shaped like a battery. There were 2 trash cans on both sides, and there was an ash-shaped groove at the top for extinguishing cigarette butts. This was a very common trash can, but why was there a crying sound coming from it? Guhan quietly walked to the side of the trash can, and when Guhan got closer, the crying sound became clearer. It was obvious that someone was hiding in the trash can. At the same time, Guhan could tell that the crying sound was coming from a young child. Considering that opening the trash can might scare the child, Guhan gently knocked on the side of the trash can, and said softly, "What are you doing in there? Do you need my help?" Time seemed to stop in the entire trash can, and the crying sound disappeared without a trace. It was obvious that the child was so scared that she forgot to cry. This made Guhan a little annoyed. He did not want to scare the child, but he still ended up scaring her. At the same time, Ji Yu Han could not help but smile bitterly at his own transformation. Ever since he admitted that Jiyu Xuanwu was his daughter, Ji Yu Han realized that it was getting harder and harder to control his heart. Sometimes, even if he wanted to harden his heart, he would not be able to do so. The cold and dark Ji Yu Han of the past had completely bid farewell to this world. "Are you here to take me out?" After a while, the child in the trash can asked weakly. "No. I'm here to help you. If you trust me," Guhan said softly. "Okay. I trust you." The child in the trash can mustered up her courage and said. So, Guhan directly opened the trash can, reached into it, and pulled out a little loli. This was a very young loli, and she seemed to be a little younger than Qingpin. Otherwise, she would not be able to hide in such a small trash can. She was different from Po or Duyu, whose skin was so delicate that it could drip water. This loli's skin was very dry, and there were even signs of peeling at such a young age. In terms of skin, it was not an exaggeration to say that this was the skin of a 40-year-old woman. But in reality, this loli looked like she was only 4 or 5 years old. Other than her skin, in terms of appearance and cuteness, this loli could not be compared to Qingpin and Duyu. The only thing that could be compared to them was her pair of big round eyes. She was like a girl that only existed in anime, abnormally bright and cute, reflecting light in the dark. This little loli was wearing a linen shirt that covered her from neck to ankles. The bottom part of the shirt was smooth. For a child of 4 or 5 years old, this shirt was obviously too thin, especially on such a cold night. When Guhan carried this loli, he could feel that her skin was constantly shivering because of the cold. All the pores on her skin tightened like goosebumps. Put this on. Guhan took out a set of crocodile clothes that Qingpin wore from his dimensional pocket. Although this crocodile clothes usually looked stupid and cute, it was the best tool to keep warm at this time. The little loli could not refuse, so Guhan directly tore off her clothes and put on a baby's underwear. Finally, he stuffed her into the crocodile clothes. Although at first she was afraid of Ji Yuhan's forceful tearing of her clothes and cried in panic, when the underwear was worn on her body, a soft touch that she had never felt before made the little loli fall into an unprecedented happiness. In her short life, she had never worn cotton underwear that was as gentle as a mother's hand. Clothes made of linen were her best clothes. Next, the crocodile clothes made the little loli feel a warmth that she had never felt before. Her body temperature that she had painstakingly produced was not blown away by the frightening howling wind. All of it was wrapped up by the thick crocodile clothes, warming her trembling body. So comfortable. The little loli murmured. Put this on your stomach. Guhan then stuffed a Qingpin's personal heat pad into the little loli's crocodile clothes. Such comfortable warmth almost made the little loli fall asleep. Thank you, big brother. Big brother, you're the best. The little crocodile suddenly turned her head and used her wet lips to kiss Guhan's face, before shyly shrinking back. What's your name? Guhan asked. Name? What's the meaning of a name? This little loli actually didn't know the meaning of a name. Did that mean that she didn't have a name? A name is what others call you. Guhan tried his best to explain with simple words. For example, what do your parents usually call you? 2303. The little loli pondered for a while, before seriously telling Guhan, they usually call me 2303. 2303. What kind of name was that? Rather than saying it was a name, it sounded more like a serial number. Could it be that these girls were like those described in novels, humans created through cloning technology? Or perhaps the entire Radiant City was a human cloning city? Was that why the people here were like walking corpses without their own intelligence? Guhan couldn't help making all sorts of guesses in his heart. It sounded more reliable. My mother said that I'm the 23rd generation of humans, the third child in my family. That's why I'm called 2303. My mother is 2201, my father is 2202, and everyone else has the same name. The little loli continued. However, such an explanation made Guhan feel more and more curious about this radiant city. Putting aside the strange matter of using numbers to name people, using 22, 23 and so on to differentiate one's seniority made sense in terms of logic. However, if it was purely based on the number of children in the family, then wouldn't this radiant city be in a complete mess of logic? There was a limit to the number of children a couple could have in their lifetime, and most families would have 5 or less children. Radiant City was a city with a population of 300,000. That meant that there were at least 50,000 households. If these households were to be named according to this logic, then the Radiant City wouldn't be able to survive. If these families were named according to this logic, then let's not talk about others. There were at least 50,000 children named 2301 in this city. 2201's parents, 2101's grandparents. If everyone had the same name, then what was the point of having a name? However, the little lowly in Guhan's embrace was, after all, just a 4-year-old child. When Guhan asked a slightly more profound question, the little lowly revealed an ignorant expression. She only knew that her parents called her that, and she didn't care about anything else. Helpless, Guhan could only temporarily give up on asking her this question, and instead asked her why she was in the rubbish bin. "I don't want to go home." Hearing this question, the little lowly's mood instantly fell. A 4-year-old lowly was already thinking of running away from home. Chapter 903. Home is not good. Daddy, Mommy, Big Brother, and Big Sister don't smile. I can't smile either. I don't like to talk either. I'm only happy here. I don't want to leave this place. After all, she was a child, and her words were a little illogical. After a simple explanation, he understood what the little lowly meant. She was saying that none of her family members knew how to smile or talk. Furthermore, the little lowly felt that she was about to become like that. However, when she was in this amusement park, she could feel true happiness. Hence, she ran away from home and hid in the trash can. She didn't want to return to that joyless home. The little lowly's words made Guhan understand many things. First of all, the people here were not born as zombies. When they were young, they should still have their own happiness and humanity like the little lowly. However, as they grew older, their humanity would gradually be obliterated. They would become zombies that didn't like to smile, talk, or move. However, this Radiance amusement park seemed to have a way to restore the lost humanity. As long as one stayed in this amusement park and played with the game facilities, they would be able to regain a portion of their humanity. Why exactly is this so? Guhan was puzzled. This world should be in the midst of a dimensional rift. It wasn't that humans didn't understand dimensional rifts. On the contrary, it was thanks to the existence of dimensional rifts that humans were able to preserve a considerable amount of essence power after the apocalypse. After the apocalypse, the last fortress of the old era, Old Swallow City, was conquered by Yuan Ku. It was Kanzu and the other swordbearers who led the humans into the dimensional rift. Humans lived inside for 20 years and rested for an entire generation before they once again killed their way out of the dimensional rift. Under the leadership of Kanzu, who had already ascended to the throne, they built the first human base city, New Swallow City, near the dimensional rift. Most of the dimensional rift's regions were isolated by the dimensional rift. If one wanted to enter the outside world, they could only pass through a few entrances. As long as the humans guarded these entrances, even if Yuan Zhen had an army of tens of millions, only a few Yuan bandits could truly attack the entrances. The difficulty of defending the entrances was greatly reduced. Back then, humans had relied on guarding the dimensional rift's door to stop Yuan Ku's army. Until now, this dimensional rift was still in the hands of humans. It was equivalent to their last fortress. If all the base cities built by humans were destroyed by Yuan Ku's attack, then humans could only hide in the dimensional rift again and wait for the next rise. It was also because of this that humans had a deep understanding of dimensional rifts. They discovered that the world in dimensional rifts was no different from the natural world. There were also mountains, rivers, grasslands, rain and snow, and 4 seasons. Apart from having fewer usable resources, it was a normal world. There were no side effects to humans. But why did the humans in the Radiant City in the dimensional rift become like this? If this wasn't caused by the dimensional rift itself, what was it? Could it be the Radiance amusement park beneath his feet? Guhan was deep in thought. He didn't seem to notice that a fiery red figure was approaching him from the darkness. "Ayaya, I found you. Little girl," a somewhat familiar voice interrupted Guhan's thoughts. Guhan raised his head and saw the deputy manager of the Radiance amusement park, whom he had met once this morning and was called Crazy Third by the Black Tortoise, appear in front of him. "Miss Crazy Third, what's the matter?" Guhan couldn't help but frown as he looked at this beautiful young girl who was emitting a blood-red murderous aura. If things went wrong, another battle might break out. It's none of your business. Little man. Crazy Third waved the exquisite pistol in his hand. I'm looking for this audacious little girl. According to the rules of our Radiance amusement park, no human is allowed to stay here after 8 o'clock at night, not even a little girl. What will you do to her? Guhan asked thoughtfully. After all, this was Yuan Ku's territory. Although Guhan had the title of the general manager's husband, he knew that this title wouldn't be of much use to the deputy manager in front of him. Moreover, the Radiance amusement park was full of mysteries. Before figuring out the truth, Guhan didn't want to have any conflict with Yuan Ku here. Therefore, Guhan secretly decided that if this little lowly was simply driven out, then he would return her to Crazy Third. Rules must be deterrent. Even a cute little girl is no exception. I think tearing her soul apart must be a very good punishment, Crazy Third said as he suddenly put his pistol in his mouth and smiled sweetly as if the pistol was a delicious popsicle. Tearing her soul apart? Guhan let out a long sigh. He didn't even need to think to know how painful it was for a child to have her soul torn apart. If Guhan didn't know about this matter, it wouldn't be a big deal. But now that it happened in front of him, Guhan absolutely couldn't sit back and watch a poor little human girl get her soul torn apart. Brother, what does tearing her soul mean? The little lowly in Guhan's arms asked curiously with her eyes wide open. For a young girl like her, she probably couldn't even understand the meaning of soul. Guhan patted the little lowly's head. It's okay, brother won't let anyone hurt you. Miss Crazy Third, please give me some face and let this child go, Guhan said dryly. There was a hint of pleading in his tone. This was the first time Guhan showed such a tone to Yuan Ku. Oh. Then, let's see if Mr. Guhan has the ability to move my heart. Crazy Third grinned, but at this moment, she raised her pistol and aimed at Guhan. Guhan's eyes had long been fixed on Crazy Third. The other party's sudden attack was also within Guhan's expectations. The only thing that Guhan didn't expect was that the angle of this shot seemed to be a bit skewed. It was impossible to hit his body. Could it be that this Yuan Ku named Crazy Third was actually a terrible marksman? Not good. Her target is the child. It wasn't until the bullet was halfway through its flight that Guhan suddenly discovered that the real target of this Crazy Third was not him, but the little lowly in his arms. It was too late for Guhan to dodge in an instant. He could only move back slightly and block the bullet with his arm. The bullet hit Guhan's personal shield. After a burst of violent sparks, it lost the power to move forward and dripped at Guhan's feet. What surprised Guhan was that this bullet actually destroyed 15% of Guhan's personal shield's energy. At this time, Guhan's personal shield came from the juicy sword. In terms of shield strength alone, it was not weaker than a top-notch famed sword-level sword wielder. This girl's subsequent ordinary shot had destroyed 15% of juicy sword Guhan's personal shield's energy. Such power was definitely not the power that dragon-level Yuan Ku should have. This Crazy Third's level was at least meteor-level Yuan Ku's strength, which was equivalent to the strength of those great wizards in Shanghai Pass. Oh, your defense is not bad. Seeing that her bullet didn't work, Kwong Three's face was slightly surprised, but this surprise was immediately covered up by her charming smile. Then, why don't you try my two-shot combo again? Bang! Bang! 2 consecutive pistol shots rang out, and 2 bullets were shot at Guhan from different angles. Moreover, these 2 bullets were also aimed at the little lowly in Guhan's hand. This made Guhan extremely angry. Why did a child have to be involved in a battle between 2 powerhouses? The juicy sword drew an angry arc in the air, and Crazy Third's 2 bullets were knocked away by Guhan. Good eyesight. Try my triple combo. Just as Crazy 3 was about to shoot again, his body suddenly disappeared. 0.01 seconds later, a pitch-black sword hilt pierced through the afterimage left behind by Crazy 3. She can actually teleport. Just now, Crazy 3 had not used her speed to evade his attack. Instead, she had used a skill similar to instant movement to complete a spatial swap. Crazy 3 had not used her speed to evade his attack. Instead, she had used a skill similar to instant movement to complete a spatial swap. Oh my, what a fast speed. I almost couldn't react in time. Crazy Third, who appeared in front of Guhan again, said with a smile, but there was an extra serious expression in her eyes. At this time, she realized that Guhan was not a simple human swordsman, but a rare master swordsman. But you can't hit me. We are not on the same time. Crazy Third once again raised the rifle in her hand, ready to shoot at Guhan. However, Guhan would not give her the chance to shoot. At the moment when Crazy Third had not pressed the trigger, she had to choose to teleport again. This was because Guhan's juicy sword had once again appeared beside her. The following battle made Crazy Third feel extremely tired. Although Crazy Third could teleport, the distance she could teleport was not long. It was about a range of about 20 meters. This distance was enough for Guhan to find and attack Crazy Third before Crazy Third fired the next shot. This kind of battle lasted for a few minutes. Guhan was still full of energy, but Crazy Third began to pant slightly. Obviously, maintaining a high frequency of teleportation was also very exhausting for her. Oh, it seems that I need to find some helpers to help me. Crazy Third teleported 5 times in a row in the same direction, creating a safe distance of 100 meters between her and Guhan. Her slightly bulging chest was moving up and down intensely. At the same time, Crazy Third lifted the bangs that covered her left eye. Unexpectedly, unlike her right eye, which was blood red, Crazy Third's left eye was actually golden. In the pupil, one could vaguely see an ancient clock ticking. Chapter 904. Carving Emperor. The clock in Kwong 3's left eye began to spin crazily, and her shadow continued to elongate. There seemed to be something brewing in this shadow. Finally, a girl came out of Kwong 3's shadow, and this girl was exactly the same as Kwong 3. Whether it was clothes or appearance, everything was exactly the same, and there was no difference at all. And it wasn't just one. More clones came out of Kwong 3's shadow one after another. Finally, a total of 8 clones appeared around Guhan, surrounding Guhan. Hie! Can you block so many bullets? 9 identical voices rang in Guhan's ears at the same time. It was as if 9 identical videos were played at the same time. The intertwined voices made people feel creepy. There are 2 types of doppelgangers, one is a fake doppelganger, and the other is a real doppelganger. Which one is this Yuenko doppelganger? Looking at the 9 Kwong 3s around him, Ji Han secretly guessed. The so-called fake clone only served to confuse the enemy's sight. The fake clone itself did not have any attack power. Its purpose was only to hide the attack of the real body. As for the real clone, it was just like its name. The clone also had the power of the real body and could launch real attacks. In the human's data, there were many Yuan Ku who had fake clones. Almost 1 in 10 Yuan Ku had mastered the skill of fake clone. However, Yuan Ku who had a real clone was very rare. Only the top Yuan Ku could master such a terrifying skill. After all, a real clone was equivalent to doubling the strength of the original body. If these 8 clones of Kwong 3 were all real clones, then it would be too terrifying. Bang! Bang! Soon, Kwong 3 gave Guhan an answer with his own action. He opened fire with his rifle at the same time, and bullets flew towards Guhan. According to the fierce changes in the air, Guhan could easily make such a judgment. That is, these 9 bullets were all real, and these 8 clones were all real clones. This discovery surprised Guhan, and at the same time, his vigilance towards Kwong 3 increased by more than a few levels. Guhan felt that he had to show his true strength, otherwise, he might really fail miserably. 9 swords of mysterious heaven, sword of the spring. Facing the bullets, Guhan was not sure that his movement skill could 100% avoid these bullets. The most important thing was that Guhan was still holding the poor little girl in his arms. Guhan may have enough control over his own body, but with the little girl, it was inevitable that he would not be able to take care of many places. He would be fine if he was hit by 1 or 2 bullets, but if the little girl was hit by 1, she would probably turn into a pile of minced meat in an instant. Therefore, Guhan could only use the only defensive skill in the 9 swords of mysterious heaven, sword of the spring, to resist. When the umbrella-like sword energy barrier blocked in front of Guhan, all the bullets became a joke, and Guhan easily blocked them outside his body. Are you kidding me? Kwong 3's expression changed, and the 9 clones once again reloaded at the same time, ready to launch a salvo at Guhan. But this time, how could Guhan let the opponent do as he wished? 9 swords of mysterious heaven, sword of the abyss. Dozens of sword energies shot out from Guhan's body. These sword energies had a speed not inferior to the opponent's bullets. Almost at the moment when these clones fired the bullets, all the sword energies rushed in front of the clones. One bullet, teleportation. The 9 clones teleported at the same time, trying to avoid the attack of Guhan's sword energies. However, these clones did not expect that the sword energies did not disappear after missing, but continued to travel through the space. Immediately afterward, Guhan sent out 3 waves of sword energies in a row. These 3 waves of sword energies intersected and ran parallel to each other. After a mysterious change, they together formed a kind of golden chrysanthemum, covering the entire space. This was the evolved skill of Sword of the Abyss that Guhan comprehended in the game's 8 Cities tournament, Abyss Golden Chrysanthemum. It could make the sword energy of Sword of the Abyss cover every inch of the land in the entire space. Suddenly, Kwong 3's clones were in an extremely bad state. Although they could teleport, every time they teleported to another place, there would be sword energies following closely behind them. This forced Kwong 3's clones to teleport again, and in the end, they could only constantly teleport to avoid the Abyss Golden Chrysanthemum. However, Kwong 3's teleportation was not unlimited. It consumed a lot of power, especially when Kwong 3 maintained 8 clones at the same time. The power consumption was even greater. Finally, one of Kwong 3's clones was hit by the sword energy because she could not teleport in time. Then, her entire left arm was cut off by the sword energy, and it fell to the ground dripping with blood. Kwong 3's clones also seemed to have a weakness, which was that their defense could not be compared to the real meteor-level Yuan Ku. Just 1 sword energy was enough to cut off one of her arms. The attack of this doppelganger seemed to be a signal. More doppelgangers were hit by Sword of the Abyss's sword energy. In the end, Kwong 3 had no choice but to grit his teeth and let all of his doppelgangers return to his shadow. Then, he continued to teleport away from Jiyu Han. Seeing that his opponent was out of the attack range of the Abyss Golden Chrysanthemum, Guhan's heart skipped a beat, and all the sword energy slowly dissipated, as if the Golden Chrysanthemum just now did not exist. "I'm tired. I won't play with you for now. We will have more chances in the future." The escaping Kwong 3 left these feeble words and disappeared at the end of the dark street. The Radiance amusement park finally returned to peace. "Big brother. 2303, I'm so dizzy." Because he was afraid that Kwong 3 would secretly kill the little lowly in his arms, Guhan had been protecting the little lowly in his arms. But this way, the little lowly would have to withstand Guhan's terrifying movement speed. To be honest, the little lowly feeling a little dizzy was already the best result. If it were someone with a weaker physique, they would probably be foaming at the mouth due to the chaos of the pituitary gland. It was impossible to send the little lowly home now, so Guhan could only take her back to the Red Maple Kingdom's castle. Then, he climbed the wall to his room and put the little lowly together with Ching Pin and Duyu. Not to mention, when the 3 of them lay together, even the most stone-hearted person would be melted by their cute sleeping appearance. When Guhan woke up again, the sky was already bright. Yi Tian had already returned to her room and was snoring drunkenly on the floor. Even Juzi was lying peacefully next to her pillow. Among all the sword maidens, only Chijian was awake, and it was clumsily preparing today's breakfast. It seemed that Chijian wanted to make a simple hot dog sandwich. In fact, the hot dog and sandwich were ready-made. Chijian only needed to put some ketchup and spicy sauce on them, and then wrap them together. But even such a simple step was messed up by Chijian. The red ketchup and black spicy sauce stained Chijian's clothes, making it look particularly funny. "You're not allowed to look." Realizing that Guhan had woken up, Chijian's face turned red, and then it desperately tried to hide the thing in its hand behind its back. Unfortunately, in terms of skills, 10 Chijian were no match for 1 Guhan. So, Guhan easily snatched the messy hot dog sandwich from Chijian's hand. Without waiting for Chijian to say anything, he swallowed the hot dog sandwich in 2 or 3 bites. "It tastes good. Although it does look a little ugly," Guhan touched his mouth and said with a smile, "One is not enough, help me make a few more." "You wish." Chijian stuck out its tongue, but it still obediently went to make the next hot dog sandwich. At the same time, Chijian made up its mind to make this one better than the previous one. This appearance was too embarrassing. While Chijian was busy making the hot dog sandwich, Guhan finally had the time to look at the radiant amusement park through the window. It was around 6 in the morning, and there was a continuous stream of humans approaching the entrance of the amusement park. They then lined up in an orderly manner, preparing for a new day's adventure. What kind of secret is hidden inside? Ji Yuhan looked at these zombie-like humans, puzzled. Last night, when the little loli was sleeping soundly, Ji Yuhan had actually secretly and thoroughly checked the little loli's tender body without missing a single detail. In the end, he had even taken some of the little loli's genes for verification. Thus, Guhan came to the conclusion that the little loli was indeed a real human. She was a human born through natural mating, and not through the ethical cloning method. The little loli was one of those humans, which meant that the other humans in the Radiant City were also born naturally. Therefore, Guhan's previous guess of human cloning was completely wrong. While Guhan was still thinking about these humans, a beeping alarm suddenly came from the corner of the room. Warning. The patient's vital signs continue to decline. The disease is out of control. Please send her to the hospital for treatment immediately. Warning. The patient's vital signs continue to decline. The disease is out of control. Please send her to the hospital for treatment immediately. The alarm came from Guhan's immortal sword-grade medical pod. Guhan immediately put down the questions in his mind and ran to the side of the medical pod. He saw the medical pod flashing red lights continuously. At the same time, the screen kept reminding Guhan that the patient was about to die. Ji Yuhan took a closer look at Ashima's various data and was shocked to find that compared to when she first entered the medical cabin, Ashima's various vital signs had actually dropped by about half. This was especially true for her blood, which had less than 15% of her blood left. No wonder the medical cabin indicated that the patient was about to die. What was going on? Could it be that the medical pod was broken and could not even treat such a small superficial wound and blood loss? Or could it be that the medical pod's internal storage was insufficient and not enough for Ashima's use? Guhan's hands immediately moved quickly on the screen. Very quickly, he brought up the list of the medical pod's remaining medical resource. Most of the medical resource showed 100%. Only a few resources related to blood production showed 99%. Looks like she's not an ordinary human, Guhan muttered. Normally, when 70% of the blood was lost, around 10% of the medical resource would be consumed. However, Ashima had only consumed 1%. This meant that Ashima's body was completely unable to accept the treatment of these medical resource, while ordinary humans could definitely accept the treatment of these medical resource. Chapter 905. In any case, Ashima could no longer stay in the medical bay, otherwise, she could only wait for death. Guhan carried Ashima out of the medical bay, and at this time, Ashima's pulse was so weak that it was almost undetectable, and Ashima's heartbeat could not be detected at all. There was no other way. With such a thick layer of flesh, Guhan could not feel Ashima's heartbeat no matter what. Not good. I must think of a way to save her, otherwise she's really going to die. Guhan immediately began to check the information in his personal terminal, wanting to see what kind of physique would not be able to accept the medical bay's treatment. Unfortunately, there was no such information in his personal terminal, or rather, such a human did not exist at all. Could it be? A trace of hesitation flashed in Guhan's eyes, but in the end, he still carried Ashima and ran directly to the door of Gu Black Tortoise's room. Dong 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 dong. There was a series of hurried knocks on the door, and after a while, Gu Black Tortoise opened the door with a somewhat dazed look. Perhaps because he was staying at home, Gu Black Tortoise was dressed very casually. Only half of her off-the-shoulder pajamas were on her body, and the left side of her pajamas had already slipped down. The edges of the pajamas were so pink, it was exceptionally stunning. Ah! Get out of here! Gu Black Tortoise let out a fierce scream, and wanted to push out his shameless father who had seen his own naked body. Wait. Guhan grabbed the door and stopped Gu Black Tortoise from pushing the door open. Do you have any medicine here? Ashima can't hold on any longer. Medicine? Gu Black Tortoise then realized that Ashima was abnormally weak in Guhan's arms, and hurriedly welcomed Ashima into his room, placed her on his bed, and felt her pulse, and said very puzzled, "Why is this happening? She was clearly placed in the medical bay. Why did it deteriorate to this state? Do you have any medicine? What kind of medicine do you usually take when you're injured? You guys also bleed and get injured, right?" Guhan very hurriedly asked Gu Black Tortoise. "I do, but what do you want my medicine for?" Gu Xuanwu asked in puzzlement. "Don't tell me you want to give my medicine to her. I'm not a human. Humans can't take the medicine that I've taken. It's like poison to humans. Don't talk so much, give me your medicine, let her eat it and you will know." Listening to Guhan's words, the helpless Gu Xuanwu could not say anything more. He could only take out a small bottle of bright red liquid from his dimensional pocket. This is a dimensional solution. It contains dimensional energy. Usually, when we are slightly injured, eating this can restore our vital signs. Gu Xuanwu thought about it and decided to give a final piece of advice. The energy in this dimensional solution is in conflict with the sword essence itself. It might be fine if an ordinary person eats it, but if a sword wielder eats it, the dimensional energy and the sword essence in their body will fight. In the end, they might even explode and die. I'm fine. She's about to die anyway, so she doesn't lack this dimensional solution. Guhan did not say much and directly poured all of Gu Xuanwu's dimensional solution into Ashima's mouth. Gu Xuanwu's eyes revealed an unbearable expression. She probably thought that Ashima was already dead. However, to Gu Xuanwu's surprise, but it seemed to be within Guhan's expectations, Ashima did not have any discomfort after drinking the dimensional solution. On the contrary, her originally cold body began to warm up again. Her pale skin also had a little redness and her pulse was beating more vigorously. Obviously, Ashima began to gradually recover under the effect of this bottle of solution. "Do you have any more dimensional solution? Give me a few more bottles." Guhan asked Gu Xuanwu for a few more bottles of dimensional solution and poured all of them into Ashima's mouth in one breath. Ashima's body also began to recover at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the breath of life bloomed in her body again. "How can this be?" Gu Xuanwu's expression fully expressed how unbelievable she was. "It's very simple, she's Yuan Ku, not a human. Just like you." Guhan's words struck Gu Xuanwu's ears like a sudden clap of thunder. "Father, you mean, she's the same as me, a hybrid of Yuan Ku and a human?" Gu Xuanwu's entire body began to become excited. One could imagine how exciting it was to find one of the same kind in the vast sea of mutants. Yes. Not only can she perfectly impersonate a human, but she can also become the Saintess of Jerusalem. Only someone in the same situation as you can do it. Guhan actually wanted to say that there was a hybrid of human and Yuan Ku in his scabbard. However, this hybrid had already become his sword mistress, and from the looks of it, this would become something that she would never be willing to mention for the rest of her life, so he did not say anything more. "My medicine." The muddle-headed Ashima finally woke up from her long coma. When she woke up, the first thing she did was to find her dimensional pocket. Then, she quickly fished out a bottle of vermilion liquid that was exactly the same as the solid black tortoise's dimensional solution. After finishing it, she let out a long sigh of relief and quickly threw the bottle back into her dimensional pocket. It was only then that Ashima realized something was wrong with her situation. She was in a room that was full of medieval style. She immediately looked around anxiously and was shocked to find that Guhan and Gu Xuanwu were in the room as well. "Guhan, Gu Xuanwu, why are the two of you here? Why are the two of you in the Radiance amusement park?" Ashima's words caused Guhan and Gu Xuanwu to look at each other. Ashima had clearly just woken up, so this should be her first time here. How did she know that this was the Radiance amusement park? Ashima seemed to have realized that she had misspoken, so she immediately covered her mouth and tried to make her expression as natural as possible. "You don't know, but I've been here with the seniors from Jerusalem before, so I know a little about the situation here. So, You even know the program code to open the door. Ji Yuhan smiled faintly. Not everyone could memorize the coding of the program. Unless their senior was a computer expert, and Ashima had spent a lot of time memorizing the complex coding, there was no way she could open the door and enter the Guanghui amusement park. Ashima gave up on explaining. She knew that no matter how she explained, Guhan and the others would not believe her. Ashima was very nervous, and her eyes looked around aimlessly. Then, she saw a few empty bottles beside her. These empty bottles were stained with vermilion liquid residue. Obviously, these bottles were used to contain the dimensional solution. Why? I clearly put the bottles back into the dimensional pocket. Why are there still bottles here? Ashima looked very panicked. These are my medicine. Jiyu Xuanwu seemed to have guessed Ashima's thoughts. These are the dimensional solution that I used to take your life. Otherwise, you would have died from excessive blood loss. What? You fed me the dimensional solution. Ashima suddenly raised her head, and there was a fierce look in her eyes, as if she wanted to eat Jiyu Xuanwu. This was because she knew that her secret had been discovered by Jiyu Xuanwu. If she wanted to keep her secret, she had to kill Jiyu Xuanwu. Are you sure you can beat me? Miss Ashima. Guhan stood in front of Jiyu Xuanwu. Keep your thoughts to yourself. We saved your life. If it weren't for these bottles of dimensional solution, you would have been dead. I can't beat you. Ashima lowered her head weakly. But if my secret is discovered by you, I will also die. Neither the Sword Committee nor Jerusalem will allow me to live. Don't worry, Dad won't tell anyone. Look, I'm the same as you. I'm also a hybrid of Yuan Ku and human. When Jiyu Xuanwu saw Ashima's expression, his heart immediately softened. Before Guhan could stop him, Jiyu Xuanwu directly released the dimensional force on the surface of his body. This could fully prove that Jiyu Xuanwu was a part of Yuan Ku's essence. I didn't think that there would be people like me in this world. Ashima appeared to be as surprised as Jiyu Xuanwu, but what made her even more surprised was that Jiyu Xuanwu actually called Guhan Dad. You are. Ashima seemed to be unable to control her tongue. He's my dad. We are biological father and daughter. Jiyu Xuanwu couldn't wait to introduce Ashima. She was immersed in this kind of joy. This was a very understandable thing. Think about it, a girl who had lived alone for most of her life suddenly had her own biological father, and also discovered that there was someone like her. This was such a happy thing. Just when Jiyu Xuanwu was preparing to have a good chat with Ashima about the matters between the two of them, Jiyu Han finally could not stand it anymore. He patted Jiyu Xuanwu's shoulder and said indifferently, I think I heard your mother calling you. It's best for you to go over, she must be missing you very much. Then I'll go and be back soon. In Jiyu Xuanwu's heart, his mother was naturally more important, so Jiyu Xuanwu could only bid farewell to his new friend and quickly ran towards Thousand Doasuzu's room. I didn't think that there would be people of mixed blood like me in this world. Ashima looked at Jiyu Xuanwu's receding figure, her face brimming with a happy smile. I really regret saving you. I didn't think that Black Tortoise couldn't control her own mouth. Guhan stood behind Ashima and said, Don't worry, I won't say anything. We are all people with the same bitter fate. When Ashima spoke, she seemed to be extremely emotional. Her chest was constantly moving up and down, simply like a surging wave. Chapter 906. Inside the room, Guhan discussed with Ashima for a while, mostly about how to establish an offensive and defensive alliance, and how to keep his secret after returning to the human world. Before he could finish, the door was violently pushed open. Jiyu Xuanwu was the first to rush in, followed by Chidu Isuzu, who was trembling as he walked. When Chidu Isuzu saw Ashima, her sickly body began to quickly become excited. She was even more excited than when she saw Guhan. It was as if Guhan's appearance was predictable, but Ashima's appearance was unpredictable. Ashima's expression when she saw Chidu Isuzu was also very strange. She lowered her head unnaturally, as if she wanted to avoid Chidu Isuzu's gaze, looking like a thief who was caught red-handed. Black Tortoise, can you and your dad go out? Ashima took a deep breath and said to Jiyu Xuanwu and Guhan. Oh. Although Jiyu Xuanwu didn't understand why his mother wanted to chase him out, He still obediently nodded and pulled Guhan out of the room, leaving only Ashima and Chidu Isuzu in the room. There's something strange in here. Jiyu Xuanwu thoughtfully looked at the closed door and whispered to himself. There are many strange things. Guhan patted Jiyu Xuanwu's head. Show me around this amusement park. You left me hanging for the whole day yesterday. No problem. Dad. This time, Jiyu Xuanwu was very happy to call Guhan Dad, and he eagerly led Guhan around the entire Guanghui amusement park. The amusement park is divided into a total of 4 areas, namely the large-scale entertainment equipment area, the large-scale garden area, the self-sports competition area, and the amusement park office area. Our amusement park has a total of more than 600 employees, all of whom are Yuan Ku. Not a single human being is among them. For example, the panda dolls that are playing with the 2 children in the square. They are actually real pandas. One is called a Bao, the other is called Li Shan. They are a pair of biological father and son. But what I don't understand is that our Bao has a father who is always proud of himself. I really don't understand why our Bao would recognize a duck as his father. Along the way, Jiyu Xuanwu explained the situation of the amusement park to Guhan, and also introduced a lot of Yuan Ku to Guhan. When these Yuan Ku saw Guhan, they all gave Guhan a relatively cautious and reserved expression. None of them dared to take the initiative to greet Guhan. Some of them seemed to be faintly afraid of Guhan, and when they saw Guhan, they immediately ran away, as if Guhan was a god of plague. Along the way, Guhan also saw no less than 100 different Yuan Ku, and he found that these Yuan Ku's levels were actually not high. Yuan Ku like Kwong 3, who was at the meteor stage, was the top Yuan Ku among them. Most of the Yuan Ku were mouse stage and tiger stage Yuan Ku, and there were even many Yuan Ku that looked exactly like ordinary people without any special abilities. For example, there was a little loli that Guhan met who was playing a piccolo and often inexplicably said meow pass. Guhan was sure that this Yuan Ku was definitely a Yuan Ku without any special abilities. Even if he met an ordinary person with a man-made sword maiden, he could easily kill this Yuan Ku. There were many Yuan Ku like this meow pass. If he and Liuonian Ling went all out, they could easily raze this place to the ground and kill all these Yuan Ku. But it was precisely because of this that Guhan let go of his desire to kill this amusement park. This amusement park looked more like a replica of the Freedom Metropolis. The Yuan Ku here could coexist peacefully with humans, and they posed very little danger to humans. Moreover, because of the black tortoise, there was no way Guhan would lay his hands on this amusement park. The biggest dissatisfaction in Guhan's heart about the amusement park was probably the glory metropolis around it. These humans who were like walking corpses made Guhan very worried. In essence, Guhan was still a guy with the dream of being the savior of humanity. No matter what, he could not sit back and watch these humans continue to be walking corpses. The little loli that he found last night proved that the humans here were normal when they were born, but they had become walking corpses for some special reason. At the same time, through today's observation, he found that the amusement park's facilities really had the ability to restore the basic humanity of these walking corpses. The humans who had regained their humanity seemed to be well aware of this situation. After a brief smile in the amusement park, they could only leave the amusement park through the back door with a gloomy look on their faces. It wouldn't take long for them to return to the state of the walking dead. Therefore, this state of walking corpses was not incurable. As long as they found the right way, they could save these 300,000 poor people, and then bring all of them to Yuzhang City and let them live a happy life again. This was a very great goal, but the premise was that Guhan had to figure out why these people had become walking corpses. It seemed that he could only wait for 1052 bells to finish talking to Ashima and see if he could get the answer out of her. While Guhan was silently thinking about this, he suddenly saw 2 figures in the distance running over, out of breath. They ran into the room and saw that it was Ohm and the Electric Sisters. "Miss Black Tortoise, it's bad," Ohm said while gasping for breath. The manager is injured." "What?" Jiyu Black Tortoise's face was pale with fear. "How did my mother get injured? She has never been injured before. It's that woman. It's the woman that this man brought back." Electric Sister stared fiercely at Guhan, as if all the fault originated from Guhan. It was that woman who stabbed the manager with a sword. If it weren't for Kwong-san coming back in time, I'm afraid the manager would have died in the hands of that woman. Ashima. Jiyu Black Tortoise had entered a state of madness. She originally had a very good feeling about Ashima, thinking that she was the same kind of person as herself, and had a feeling of sympathy for her. But she never thought that this Ashima would actually hurt her mother. Her mother was obviously so weak, and if she wasn't careful, she might. Jiyu Black Tortoise didn't dare to think about it anymore, and regardless of what happened to Guhan, she began to run toward the Maple Kingdom's castle. Guhan shook his head, and could only follow behind Jiyu Black Tortoise. When he returned to the castle, he found that the castle was already filled with a lot of Yuan Ku, and they surrounded Thousand Do Isuzu's room. When Jiyu Black Tortoise arrived, they reluctantly made way for Jiyu Black Tortoise to reach Thousand Do Isuzu's side. Thousand Do Isuzu's wound was located on his left shoulder, and the affected area had been bandaged, but there was still bright red blood seeping from the edge of the bandage. There were several empty bottles of dimensional solution beside Thousand Do Isuzu. It seemed that Thousand Do Isuzu's injury was not light. Mom! Woo woo woo! Jiyu Black Tortoise threw himself into Thousand Do Isuzu's arms and cried, while Guhan looked around the surrounding environment. Seeing that Kwong-san was sitting there with a look of watching the fun, he took the initiative to approach. What happened just now? Guhan frowned and asked Kwong-san. What else could have happened? Kwong-san smiled charmingly. Of course, it was the woman you brought who stabbed our manager. If I hadn't come in time, maybe the manager would have died in her hands. That's not necessarily the case. Guhan looked calm. I looked at her wound, and the wound could float up. This also shows that Ashima had no intention of taking Isuzu's life. Otherwise, as long as the blade went down a little bit, he could have pierced Isuzu's heart, and not just injured her shoulder. TSK. You're still defending her at this time. You really don't know who your wife is. I'm just stating the facts, and I was the one who brought her here, so I have to be responsible for her. Guhan curled his lips. Where is she now? Where did you take her? Why should I tell you? Kwong-san laughed even more happily. I can't make the decision on this matter. When the manager recovers a little, you can tell her personally. After saying that, Kwong-san jumped out of the window, not giving Guhan a chance to interrogate her. On the other side, after a few words with Jiyu Xuanwu, Isuzu Chidu suddenly fainted without any warning. A few minutes later, a doctor with long, light red hair and a very handsome face in a white coat walked in. The doctor didn't have any medical tools in his hands, and just glanced at Isuzu Chidu. A very serious expression appeared on his face. Dr. Roman, how is my mother? Jiyu Xuanwu asked very nervously. Oh, let me think. How should I put it? Her situation should be considered very bad. Roman tried his best to organize his words, as if trying to lighten the atmosphere as much as possible, but it's not that there isn't any good news. For example, the manager can still live for a few more days. Wait, what the hell is this good news? Hearing this good news, Jiyu Xuanwu was so scared that he collapsed to the ground. Dr. Roman, is there any way to save my mother? Dr. Roman, you're the best doctor in the world, you must have a way, right? Dr. Roman seemed to have become Jiyu Xuanwu's last life-saving straw, and Jiyu Xuanwu hugged Dr. Roman's thigh and refused to let go. It's not that there's no way. Dr. Roman scratched his head with some difficulty. For some reason, seeing this scene, Jiyu Han felt that there might be a new trouble descending on him. Chapter 907. Sure enough, Dr. Roman's next words directly threw the matter onto Guhan's head. According to Dr. Roman, the reason why Thousand Do Isuzu fell sick was because some evil aura had invaded his body. Thousand Do Isuzu was originally in a dying state, but under the effect of Ashima's sword, Thousand Do Isuzu's immunity completely collapsed. This evil aura could collide in Thousand Do Isuzu's body uncontrollably. Once Thousand Do Isuzu died, this evil aura might even control Thousand Do Isuzu's body, preventing him from returning to his original world through the dimensional vortex. Instead, he would become a puppet controlled by evil. At that time, everyone might even have to destroy Thousand Do Isuzu's body. Dr. Roman's words made Jiu Xuanwu even more nervous. It was fine if his mother didn't have long to live, but she was going to be turned into a puppet after her death. This was something Jiu Xuanwu couldn't accept. There was only one way to save Thousand Doasuzu, and that was to expel the evil aura in Thousand Doasuzu's body. This way, not only would the sword wounds be fine, but Thousand Doasuzu would also completely recover and become the immortal Yuan Ku who could live for 100 years. However, Dr. Roman said that this evil aura was very powerful, and it might even be the aura emitted by the universe-class or intergalactic Yuan Ku. With his strength, he definitely wouldn't be able to expel this aura. Only by finding the source of the evil power and defeating it could he completely save Thousand Doasuzu. Very well, this way, the whole thing became a very traditional routine, which was commonly known as the brave fighting the evil dragon routine. Defeating the evil demon king would save the beautiful princess. Then, the brave and the princess would live happily together. This was a very standard routine. However, the tricky thing happened next because Dr. Roman made it very clear that he didn't know where the source of the evil aura was. The other great ancestors also shook their heads in response, expressing that they had never heard of the existence of evil, nor did they know where it was located. This way, the situation fell into a deadlock. The brave fighting the evil dragon at least knew where the evil dragon's nest was. However, Thousand Doasuzu was going to be game over in one day, and everyone hadn't even found the location of the final boss. Actually, I think the manager of Chidu Isuzu actually knows the source of this evil existence. Dr. Roman suddenly said thoughtfully, I've diagnosed the manager a few times before, and I've also mentioned the evil aura. However, every time I mentioned it, the manager's eyes became strange. He asked me to stop talking, and he never asked me how to deal with the evil energy. So I guess the manager might know the inside story. She might even know what the source of the evil aura is and where it is. But out of some scruples, she would rather die than tell anyone about it. Why? Mother, why did she have to be so silly? If you're sick, you should go and get it treated. If there's an evil existence, then go kill it. Why do you want to die? Jiu Xuanwu's words became choked. People always have a lot of scruples. I think the person your mother scruples the most is you. Guhan stroked the head of the Jiu Xuanwu and said faintly, living in this world, other than when you are a baby, you will never be able to obtain true freedom. This has been the case since ancient times. These words are profound. Speaking of which, brother, who are you? How come I've never seen you before? Dr. Roman nodded approvingly, then looked at Guhan curiously and asked. My name is Guhan, I'm Jiu Xuanwu's father. Guhan said with a face full of smiles. So you're Miss Xuanwu's father. Speaking up to here, Dr. Roman's smile suddenly froze. Wait, if you're Miss Xuanwu's father, then wouldn't you be the manager's? Alright, this isn't the main point. Guhan didn't want Dr. Roman to continue because he didn't want to overly emphasize the non-existent husband and wife relationship between him and Chidu Isuzu. Is there any way to wake Isuzu up? Even if it's just to wake her up for 10 minutes, it would be good for her to talk about the evil existence. Then I'll try my best. Dr. Roman nodded, then took out a box out of thin air. The box contained a row of silver needles. Who would have thought that this foreigner Dr. Roman actually knew Chinese medicine, and could even use acupuncture, a miraculous technique that had been completely lost after the apocalypse. That's right, the miraculous medical technique of acupuncture had been completely lost in the human world. The council once offered 100 million renminbi as a reward in an attempt to find the lost acupuncture technique. Unfortunately, after so many years, there was no discovery. Not even 1 or 2 Yuan Ku who knew acupuncture. Who would have thought that Guhan would actually meet a foreigner who knew acupuncture in the Guanghui amusement park? Dr. Roman inserted more than 20 needles into Chidu Isuzu's body, but no matter what he did, Chidu Isuzu did not wake up. The doctor could only shake his head helplessly and put away all the needles. There's no other way, the evil energy has invaded too deeply, and the manager doesn't seem to want to wake up. Unless that old man, Hua Tuor, comes personally, there's no way to wake the manager up. Dr. Roman's words made Guhan's heart skip a beat. This Dr. Roman actually knew about Hua Tuor, and humans had been searching for him for more than 800 years. Naturally, it was impossible to find Hua Tuor again. Humans had been searching for him for 800 years, and even if Guhan had great abilities, it was impossible to find Hua Tuor in a day. Therefore, the only way was to see if there was a second person who knew the inside story. Auntie Kwong San. Auntie Kwong San is the vice general manager of the amusement park. She might know something, Jiyu Xuanwu immediately exclaimed, and then she began to search the entire room for traces of Kwong San. Unfortunately, Kwong San had just jumped out of the window, and naturally, Jiyu Xuanwu could not find any trace of Kwong San. Manager Kwong San was here just now. How did he disappear in the blink of an eye? A Yuan Ku said in confusion. Alright, regardless of whether he was here or not, the most important thing now is to find Manager Kwong San. That's right. Everyone, don't stay here, let's go out and find Manager Kwong San. After many onlookers of Yuan Ku shouted, they immediately scattered to look for Kwong San, who had just jumped out of the window. In the blink of an eye, only Jiyu Xuanwu, Guhan, and Chen Doisuzu were left in the room. Jiyu Xuanwu hugged Chen Doisuzu and cried for a while, then she walked to Guhan's side and directly threw herself into Guhan's arms and cried bitterly. Guhan could only gently comfort his cheap daughter, and secretly thought about all kinds of things that happened in the past few days. Suddenly, he had a ridiculous feeling. He wanted to become Jendi and destroy all Yuan Ku, but now he was living in harmony with such a large group of Yuan Ku. Time passed by, and the other Yuan Ku who went to look for Kwong San all sent back helpless news. As the vice general manager of the amusement park, Kwong San seemed to have disappeared. They searched the entire amusement park, but there was no trace of Kwong San. Because she had suffered a huge mental blow in a short period of time, Jiyu Xuanwu's spirit had long been in a shaky state. She didn't know when she fell asleep, so Guhan could only carry her back to her room, cover her with the quilt, and then silently return to his room. But at this time, Guhan's room was already a mess, because Qingpin, the troublemaker, had woken up. He didn't know if it was because he hadn't seen the solid cold yet, but Qingju seemed to have a little hyperactive. She pulled Duyu, the guy who also wanted to see the world in chaos, and tossed them around in the room for a while. The little loli that Guhan picked up last night was so scared that she shrank in the corner and shivered. After all, Chijian didn't have the experience of restraining children, so it could only watch helplessly and let them do whatever they wanted. Shishui was still shrinking in her scabbard and unwilling to come out, while Yi Tian was still sleeping on the floor, as if she played all night last night. I'm starving. Guhan, you're finally back. Qingpin's stomach is almost flat from hunger. As soon as he saw Guhan come back, Qingpin immediately went to Guhan's side shamelessly, grabbed Guhan's trousers, and said pitifully, I'm starving too. Duyu is starving too. Duyu didn't want to be outdone and imitated Qingpin to act cute. Guhan smiled bitterly. He really had to give it to these two guys. Without a choice, Guhan could only grab the necks of the two troublemakers, Qingpin and Duyu, like he was grabbing two ducks, and put them on the table. Then, he took out 2 bowls of instant braised pork and rice from his dimensional pocket, as well as a large portion of vacuum braised pork and a large portion of vacuum braised carp. After that, he prepared the dishes for the other sword ladies and freed Shishui and Ju Zi. He also gave Yi Tian a kick to wake her up and got all of them to eat at the table. After that, Guhan picked up the little loli who was hiding in the corner and expressing her fear. Come and eat something. As the little loli was still young, Guhan didn't take out the instant braised pork and rice directly. Instead, he chose a bowl of kanji with pork and century egg. He scooped a small mouthful with his spoon and fed it to the little loli. The little loli seemed to have never seen this kind of novel food before. She was a little scared at first, then tentatively extended her soft little tongue and licked the spoon. Then, a surprised expression appeared on her face. It smells so good. After the little loli confirmed the taste of the food, she immediately swallowed the kanji with pork and century egg in the spoon without hesitation. She was immersed in a feeling of happiness. Bad Guhan. Seeing this scene, Qingpin looked unhappy. Idiot Guhan hasn't fed Qingpin for a few days. Chapter 908. The little loli ate very quickly. She didn't look like a 4 or 5-year-old loli at all. She ate at least at the speed of a 7 or 8-year-old. She didn't even chew and just swallowed it directly into her stomach. After a few mouthfuls, Guhan stopped feeding her. Instead, he put the spoon back and solemnly said to the little loli, "You can't swallow it directly into your stomach when you eat. You have to chew it until it's soft." "What is eating? What is chewing until it's soft?" The little loli looked at Guhan blankly and asked as if she didn't understand what Guhan meant at all. What was the meaning of eating and chewing? "Have you never eaten before?" Guhan asked in disbelief. "I don't even know what eating means. Do you think I've eaten before?" The little loli pouted and stared at the leftover pork and century egg porridge in the bowl. Her saliva flowed down unconsciously and dripped into the bowl. From the Tsihai dictionary, eating is. Guhan originally wanted to use the Tsihai dictionary's explanation to explain the meaning of eating, but when he recalled the contents of the Tsihai dictionary, he realized that the Tsihai dictionary's explanation of eating was like this: it refers to life or survival in general. From a normal person's point of view, this explanation was not wrong. However, when Guhan wanted to explain the word eating to the little loli, this life or survival in general was obviously not suitable. Eating is like this. Helpless, Guhan could only teach by example. He stuffed a mouthful of rice into the little loli's mouth and then held the little loli's upper and lower jaw with both hands. He helped the little loli to chew for a while before letting the little loli swallow it. This is eating. Guhan finally concluded, it's to send things into your stomach after chewing them through your mouth. These things will be converted into energy for your survival and will also be converted into the meat on your body. Only eating can help you grow, make you grow taller, gain weight, and become an adult. Do you understand now? I understand. Although she said that she understood, the little loli still had a confused look on her face. But I don't understand. If I have to eat like this in order to grow taller and fatter, and become an adult, I don't understand. Dad and Mom never eat, so why did they become adults? What? Your parents don't eat? Guhan almost bit his tongue. What do you do when you're hungry? Meditate. At this time, the little loli was sitting on Guhan's lap. Relying on her small body, she simply sat cross-legged on Guhan's lap and assumed a meditative posture. After cultivating for a while like a monk, she opened her eyes and said, "This is what my mother taught me. When I'm hungry, I just need to close my eyes and feel the fragrant powder in the air. Then, I breathe the fragrant powder into my brain, and I can solve the problem of hunger. Although the fragrant powder is fragrant, it's still not as delicious as this porridge. I still prefer to eat porridge." Guhan suddenly felt that he might have discovered the greatest secret of Radiant City. The people here actually didn't eat, but relied on some kind of fragrant powder in the air to survive. Guhan casually swept up a sword aura, which swept up a large amount of air. Guhan then took out a filter from a portable water purifier from his dimensional pocket, allowing the air swept up by the sword aura to quickly pass through the filter. In the end, a thin layer of white powder accumulated on the surface of the filter. Guhan carefully scraped the white powder onto his palm and brought it to his nose for a sniff. As expected, there was a faint fragrance, similar to the prickly heat powder commonly used by children. It was a fragrance that no one would reject. Looks like the secret is in this powder. Guhan immediately thought that the reason why humans in Radiant City turned into walking corpses might be related to the constant use of this fragrant powder as a substitute for eating. Moreover, this fragrant powder could directly enter the human brain. Perhaps it was this fragrant powder that paralyzed the nerves in the human brain. Guhan couldn't wait to test the composition of this fragrant powder. But at this moment, a crisp shattering sound came from the window of Guhan's room. Kwong 3, dressed in red, bluntly floated in from Guhan's window. "I'm scared." The little loli immediately shrank into Guhan's embrace. When she saw Kwong 3, she revealed an instinctive expression of fear. It seemed that the battle last night had caused the little loli to be extremely afraid of this blood-red woman. "What are you doing here? Do you still want to fight?" Guhan patted the little loli's body and bluntly asked. "I can't beat you. Kwong 3 admitted very straightforwardly, but if you want to save your wife, you have to come with me, but you can only bring a sword mistress. After saying that, Kwong 3 didn't give Guhan any chance to ask any questions and jumped out of the window again. The opportunity was fleeting, and Kwong 3 would soon disappear from Guhan's sight. Considering the various secrets of Radiant Amusement Park, as well as his unfulfilled responsibility for the Black Tortoise, Guhan grabbed the juicy sword and jumped out of the window with Kwong 3. Leaving behind a few words, "Chijian, take care of them. Don't let anyone leave the room." Kwong 3's speed was very fast, the kind that could teleport while running, so Guhan had to go all out to keep up with Kwong 3's speed. Kwong 3 took Guhan all the way through the entertainment area and the sports area, and directly entered a large forest in the depths of Radiant Amusement Park. This forest covered about 70% of the area of Radiant Amusement Park, and it didn't seem to have been developed much. There was only a quaint forest trail, and there were 1 or 2 stone benches on both sides of the trail for tourists to rest on. Other than that, there was a large area of traditional primitive forest. Once they entered the depths of the forest, it seemed particularly dark and gloomy, quite like the man-eating forests in horror stories. When they reached the deepest part of the forest, Kwong 3 finally stopped running. Naturally, Guhan also stopped. "Why did you lead me here?" Guhan looked around at the deep environment around him. "You didn't set up an ambush here, did you? If I say that there are 7 or 8 Yuan Ku who are as powerful as me around here, will you run away?" Kwong 3 asked with a cunning smile. "I will choose to kill you first, and then run away myself." Guhan replied faintly. What an unromantic man. After saying that, Kwong 3's face suddenly became extremely serious. It was not like her previous coquettish style at all. "Actually, we haven't reached the place yet. I just don't want to disturb his peace. Follow me step by step, and don't make any noise." After saying that, Kwong 3 walked forward again. Ji Han didn't know what Kwong San was trying to do, but he didn't hesitate to follow behind her with his own ability. After walking for a few minutes, the forest in front of them suddenly opened up. The trees had all been cut down, leaving only wooden stumps and a towering stone tombstone in the center of the stumps. The stone tombstone was very exquisitely made, with all kinds of strange patterns engraved on it. It looked magnificent, and one could easily tell that it was a tombstone of a rich family. The tombstone was also very well taken care of. There were no weeds around it, and even the surface of the tombstone was clean. Obviously, people often came here to sweep the tombstone. Tomb of the Elf King Goku Shadao. Guhan silently looked at the name on the tombstone. Elf King Goku Shadao. This was a name that Guhan had never heard before. As for the title of Elf King, it was even more puzzling to Guhan. Although there were many kings among the handsome elves with 2 pointy ears, those kings often had tongue-twisting Western names. It was the first time Ji Han had seen a traditional Japanese name like Gohan Shadao. Could a Japanese also be the king of the elves? Shadao. Kwong 3 suddenly knelt in front of the tombstone, hugged the tombstone and began to cry. What surprised Guhan was that while crying, Kwong 3's clothes suddenly turned into a snow-white wedding dress. At this moment, Ji Han's mind was in a trance. It was as if he saw Artoria in a wedding dress for the first time in the game's instance dungeon a few months ago. She was just as beautiful and soul-stirring, and there was also a tragic story behind her back. Kwong San had been crying for a long time, and Ji Han had been watching her cry from behind. Finally, after a long time, Kwong 3 finally stopped crying, let go of the tombstone, and stood up shakily. "Did you know?" Kwong 3 said with a hollow expression. In fact, the manager was not the first person to be controlled by evil energy. The first was him, a stupid and lovely high school student, the king of all elves. But in the end, he fell under the evil energy and became an irrational puppet. Finally, I broke his neck, burned his body, and buried it here as a pile of ashes. What a sad story. Ji Han tried to make his voice sound sorrowful because he wasn't moved by such a story at all. In fact, the entire human world was full of such stories of separation and reunion. For example, old Chen and his son whom he met at the Shanhai Pass battlefield. The relationship between father and son wasn't any weaker than the relationship between Kwong 3 and his lover, but didn't they have no choice but to accept such a sad ending? For hundreds of years, I have been looking for the source of the evil energy. Kwong 3's expression instantly became ferocious. Just a while ago, I finally found it, but my strength is not enough to deal with it. So you want to use my strength to deal with it? Guhan narrowed his eyes. He finally understood why Kwong 3 called him here. Yes, last night I was just testing your strength. I thought it would be amazing if you could have 70% of my strength. I didn't expect you to be able to suppress my ability. In this way, our strength is enough. You want to save your wife, and I want to avenge my king. Our cooperation is mutually beneficial. You have no reason to refuse me, Kwong 3 said confidently. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.